Chapter 14:11. You flatter me. It's a pity. Sigh, I didn't expect that my unintentional words would hit him where it hurts. Otherwise, he would have no problem passing the round. Brotherly, you don't have to worry about it. Everyone can see that you really didn't know about it, and you tried your best to salvage the situation. Don't worry, the disciples of the Shao family of the Galaxy King also abide by the rules of the competition. Moreover, the Shao family has never favored their disciples. Otherwise, if the Shao family really said so, how could the disciples of the Shao family be a match for them? Then there would be no need to talk about training. That's right. Brotherly, you must have been in the immortal Emperor realm for too short a time. In fact, for all the disciples of the big families and forces, as long as they are within the rules and under fair conditions, even if they are killed, the forces behind them will not do anything. This is also for the long-term growth of their young disciples. Is that so? Then I worry too much. Chen Hao said with a slight smile. Chi. 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 Boom. 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 Every area of the group was in a terrifying battle. As time passed, the vast and boundless space continued to collapse and shrink. Some cultivators who wanted to rely on their speed and body movement techniques to drift away from the battle had less and less space to move. The cultivators also became denser and denser. If they wanted to continue to stay inside, they had to fight. Only by constantly eliminating opponents could the cultivators maintain their strongest state and survive the next challenge. This was a chaotic yet orderly and cruel battle. It was not only a test of one's combat power, but also one's foresight in choosing opponents. However, the further one went, the more important one's combat power was, and the less use one's foresight could play. However, all of this had nothing to do with Chen Hao. As the first-seeded contestant in the group, who had eliminated the second-seeded contestant, Xiao Manyun, with one sword move, who would dare to provoke him? It was no different from courting death. Die. You can't even withstand a single blow. All of you, come at me together. Boom. Boom. At this time, countless onlookers once again began to watch the exciting battles. The battle of the immortal realm space lock also moved away from Chen Hao and shifted to more exciting battles. Almost every group had some powerhouses who were not seeded players but who could fight against 100 alone. Moreover, as time passed, the space for each group competition became smaller and smaller. When the number of people decreased, almost every group had powerful cultivators who brazenly began to attack the seeded contestants with the number mark between their eyebrows. This had happened in previous years as well, but out of 1,000 groups, it would be considered good if 10 groups appeared. After all, there were only 10 seeded players, and only 100 could qualify. There was no need to take the risk. But now, it was the other way around. Out of 1,000 groups, it was already considered good if there were 10 teams that didn't provoke the seeded players. Such a situation proved one thing. There were too many nameless players in this year's tournament. When the number of nameless players decreased, they must have felt that the seeded players were not necessarily stronger than the others. That was why they did this. The truth was indeed so. Arrogance naturally had the right to be arrogant. After the preliminary round ended, many seeded contestants who were ranked at the bottom were eliminated. On average, there were as many as 3 contestants in each group. There are too many nameless players who have appeared. This year's individual competition will undoubtedly be very, very exciting. Those who can enter the top 100 most likely have the ability to compete for the top 3 in previous years. Indeed, it's beyond expectations by too much. More than 3,000 seeded contestants have been eliminated. It's really unbelievable. I think the experts who suddenly appeared are not only newcomers who have just appeared, but they have also concealed their aura. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a huge discrepancy in the rankings. It's really exciting. I wonder who will be the champion of this year's individual competition. We can only watch. It's impossible to estimate now. Who knows how many more experts have hidden their strength? However, we can see some clues in the following matches. After the preliminary round ended, after seeing the statistical results, the entire cultivation world was abuzz with discussion. They felt that it was unbelievable. Even though they had long known that this year's tournament would be very strong, they didn't expect it to be to this extent. Some unknown people began to show their talents one after another, and they began to show their outstanding talents. This made this year's individual ranking competition unpredictable. Congratulations to all of you for advancing to the top 100,000. Next, you will be divided into 10 groups, with 10,000 people in each group. The top 100 will still be determined, and there will also be 10 seeded contestants in each group. Now, please immediately enter the third level. The token will be activated automatically, and the competition will begin immediately. After waiting for a short while, the host's voice sounded. Chi chi chi. The top 100,000 contestants instantly turned into streaks of flowing light and quickly headed toward the third level's barrier. Buzz. The moment Chinhao stepped into the third level, the token was activated automatically and directly transported him to the 10th group. Hiss hiss hiss. At the same time, a bright golden light shone between Chinhao's eyebrows again, and a number appeared. 8. Fuck, it's actually 8. Chinhao was slightly stunned. He didn't expect to become a seeded contestant again. After all, until now, he hadn't revealed his aura of absolute power that had advanced. He had only revealed his strongest sword principal realm. It should be because I defeated Xiao Manyun with one sword that my evaluation result is slightly higher, Chinhao shrugged and thought to himself. It wasn't that Chinhao underestimated himself, but the restriction of absolute power meant that he shouldn't have been a seeded contestant. Being a seeded contestant meant that his evaluation result was in the top 100. What did it mean to be in the top 100 of the Daluo Golden Wonderland in the great world of CND? It was definitely rarer than a phoenix's feather. No, I didn't reveal it during the competition, but the token was always with me. The first evaluation was based on my aura before the special training, but this time, it should be based on my strongest aura after the special training. I was just saying, if this is the case, damn it, I barely made it into the top 100. Chinhao suddenly felt discontented and felt that it was too big. Was there any hope for him to enter the top 10 with his sword principle? Chinhao didn't think that other people's evaluations were a portrayal of his true strength. Monstrous geniuses at their level were definitely monstrous geniuses with unparalleled luck. No matter where they went, they would be outstanding. Who didn't have some powerful trump cards? Amazing. The 8th seeded contestant in the 10th group. Good, this is indeed a surprise for me. Dean, this is just within our expectations. It's nothing. Ah. Rulan, Ruoxian, this isn't your so-called surprise. It's the top 100. Although it's just an evaluation of the top 100, it means that there's a high chance of entering the top 100. Just watch. Rulan said mysteriously. Chapter 14:12. No one knew better than Ruolan and Ruoxian how amazing Chinhao's performance had been under the space-time law for 8 years. Even Ruoxian, who had always looked down on Ruolan for liking Chinhao, could not help but admire Ruolan's unique insight. Of course, even Ruolan did not expect Chinhao to be so abnormal. She favored Chinhao, but it was not only because of Chinhao's terrifying talent. It was more because of Chinhao's eyes that could touch her soul. His dark, deep eyes, or rather, the feeling of 3 lifetimes of expectation and waiting for 3 lifetimes. It was an ethereal but real feeling. Buzz. Just as Chinhao was feeling overwhelmed, the space shook, and a powerful aura suddenly appeared within his range of senses. It was a powerful but familiar aura. It's her. Chinhao turned his head slightly and saw a familiar figure. It was a graceful and beautiful figure that seemed to have merged with heaven and earth. It's him. When the owner of the figure saw Chinhao, she was clearly very surprised. Her beautiful eyes were as sharp as swords, and she did not avoid him at all. Her thin, willowy eyebrows were slightly furrowed. Number 2. Number 8? She's actually only number 2. She's the Sword King's disciple and has the body of a Sword Emperor. The bonus points should be very high. When I saw him previously, his absolute power had clearly skyrocketed. His aura shouldn't be wrong. He shouldn't be ranked so low. Perhaps it's because of his identity. Chen Hao and Miao Xian looked straight at each other. Neither of them evaded nor showed any fear. The way they looked at each other was as if they were looking at an enemy. Unfortunately, in the eyes of others, there was no real enmity. It was a bit like a saying that only enemies would meet. I wonder who's number one in the group. Both of them thought at the same time. It can't be Qin Tianhe. If that's the case, he'll be finished if he loses, let alone make it to the top 10 with his sword Dao. It can't be him. However, I hope it's him. The sooner I meet him, the sooner I'll deal with him. Suddenly, Chen Hao and Miao Xian's voices appeared in each other's minds at the same time, causing both of them to be stunned. Humph. Please control your state of mind. Miao Xuan said. What words? You looked into my eyes and even took the initiative to meet mine. Why don't you control your state of mind? Chen Hao retorted. If you don't keep an eye on me, why would I keep an eye on a fat, ugly freak like you? Fuck. Don't you know what kind of person I am? Vulgar. A damn fatty is a damn fatty. The two of them glared angrily at each other, arguing in their minds, neither giving way to the other. The effect of the subconscious mind allowed the two's minds to naturally blend together. This was out of their expectations, but it wasn't strange. Firstly, the strength of their subconsciousness was extremely strong. Secondly, under the perverse space-time laws of the Emperor's Star's secret realm, they had been cultivating together for a very long time. If they had been wholeheartedly focused back then, they wouldn't have needed to look at each other and be influenced by their subconsciousness. They would have already become one. This was the reason why Dao companions with similar cultivation realms and strengths were so terrifying. This was true telepathy, a perfect and flawless combination. When Dao companions fought side by side, they could unleash a power greater than 1+1, just like Xiao Mantian and Feng Hanwei. Qi. After Miao Xuan finished speaking, she forcefully cut off the connection between their minds. However, she still stared at Chen Hao without retreating. Buzz. At this moment, the space shook. A cold and familiar aura surprised Chen Hao slightly. Immediately, a look of joy appeared on his face as he turned his head to look. Miao Xuan frowned slightly. She had seen that faint cold aura before when she and her master met Chen Hao before the start of the preliminary round. In her opinion, it was one of the women who stood out in terms of appearance, temperament and aura among Chen Hao's many women. It was also a graceful figure, exuding an aura as cold as the moon. Xiao Wu. Qi. Chen Hao's figure flashed and arrived beside Helian Wuzi. Without the slightest hesitation, he directly grasped Helian Wuzi's small hand. How? Helian Wuzi raised her head and stared into Chen Hao's eyes. Her expression was also slightly excited as she said, I didn't expect to be in the same group as you. There are only 10 groups in total. The chances of you being in the same group as me are still very high, haha. Chen Hao said as he pinched Helian Wuzi's face intimately. When facing one woman, it was always more comfortable than facing all the women together. Helian Wuzi was the first woman to follow him from the secular world. She even gave up the original body of the endless cycle of reincarnation because of him and chose to be the woman of this life. In Chen Hao's heart, her position was not inferior to any other woman. She was even comparable to Chen Shui, let alone the others. However, Chen Hao could only think about the question of which was more important. He definitely could not show it on the surface. At this moment, facing Helian Wuzi alone, Chen Hao was much more relaxed. It couldn't be helped. When all the girls were here, Chen Hao's every move could cause jealousy. He couldn't attend to one thing and lose sight of another. When facing her alone, it did not exist. However, at this time, there were more and more cultivators around. Chen Hao was also embarrassed to be too intimate. After all, maybe the celestial realm was broadcasting them live at this moment. That's true. Are you only number 8? The great world of CND is really very strong. Helian Wuzi said as she looked at the number between Chinhao's eyebrows. It's just an evaluation. Brother's strength is not something that can be reflected by a number. Chinhao smiled slightly and said rather arrogantly. In front of his women, this guy had always been narcissistic, confident and shameless. Humph. Miao Xian looked at the fatty who was being intimate with Helian Wuzi and snorted coldly in her heart. She immediately shifted her gaze to the side. Out of sight, out of mind. She was in a bad mood, but even she herself did not understand what was so bad about it. It was just a damn fatty. How could she be jealous of him? But why was she in a bad mood? In her opinion, perhaps it was because the fatty completely ignored Helian Wuzi when he saw her. Buzz. Group 10. He became the first seeded contestant just like that. An extremely terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the space of the 10th group. The moment this aura appeared, a golden light bloomed between the eyebrows, and a number that shocked the surrounding cultivators appeared. 1. This was a woman. What was even more shocking was that this female cultivator seemed to be talking to herself. It seemed that even she herself did not expect to become the first seeded contestant. Moreover, from her tone, it seemed that she had become the first seeded contestant of the 10th group without revealing her true combat strength. The first seeded contestant of the 10th group was the top 10 experts who had been evaluated. Xiao Manxia. It's actually Xiao Manxia. The second expert of the Xiao family's Daluo Golden Wonderland. Xiao Mantian's biological sister. Waves of exclamations came from the crowd. A few cultivators who were in the same group as Chinhao on the previous level could not help but look at Chinhao. Enemies were bound to meet. Fortunately, the first seeded contestant, Xiao Manxia, could not take the initiative to provoke the fatty who was ranked 8th. Otherwise, how could Xiao Manxia not make a move? Chapter 14:13. Of course, the premise was that Xiao Manxia knew that Chinhao had trampled on her brother. However, this was obviously impossible. After all, they were not in the same group previously. Moreover, she had been in the competition and Xiao Manyun had no way of contacting her. However, this did not mean that she would not know. After all, no matter where you went, there would always be some gossipy people. Among the 100 people who had qualified in the same group as Chinhao, there were still close to 10 who had been assigned to the 10th group like Chinhao. If they were to snitch, Xiao Manxia would naturally find out. What a coincidence. Xiao Manxia looked around and her eyes suddenly lit up. A powerful aura suddenly bloomed. So powerful. What a terrifying aura. Chi chi chi, the people closest to Xiao Manxia all felt their hair stand on end as they activated their minds and protective auras to resist the terrifying aura that Xiao Manxia released. At the same time, they also looked in the direction of Xiao Manxia's gaze. Who else could it be other than Chinhao, who had the number 8 shining between his eyebrows? Chi. Xiao Manxia did not do anything, but her figure suddenly shook and disappeared. When she reappeared in front of everyone, she was already in front of Chinhao. Teleportation technique? Chinhao was slightly surprised. One could tell whether a person was an expert the moment they made a move. Not to mention how terrifying Xiao Manxia's aura was, just the level of the great teleportation technique that she casually used was not inferior to Chinhao's. Someone betrayed me so quickly. From the discussions around him, he had already heard her name and knew that she was a direct descendant of the Xiao clan. Moreover, she was Xiao Manyun's sister. Therefore, when he saw her beside him, Chinhao immediately looked at the cultivators who had advanced in the same group as him unhappily. Miao Xian, Li Yuan, what a coincidence. We are actually in the same group. This makes me, the first seeded contestant, a little unworthy of my name. To Chinhao and Miao Xian's surprise, Xiao Manxia suddenly revealed a smile and said. However, although her words were modest, that resplendent crystal light and condescending gaze was completely different. Chinhao was puzzled. Since the other party wasn't here to denounce him, why did he act like he was very familiar with him and even greeted him by name? Miao Xian frowned slightly as a sharp sword intent blossomed from her body. She said indifferently, just a possibility. Maybe. In just an instant, the aura of Miao Xian, who had been staring at Qin Hao, had completely changed. She was just like the Miao Xian that Qin Hao had met for the first time in the Emperor's Star secret realm. Her indifferent voice was filled with aloofness and arrogance. She was like an empress of a generation, and no one dared to question her. Hee hee. Unfortunately, the powerful Xiao Manxia was not affected at all. She chuckled and said, I would like to fight with you right now. Unfortunately, I am number one. However, even if you challenge me, that would be unfair to you. I don't dare to not give face to the new Sword King. Otherwise, the old ancestor would scold me to death. As for who will be the number one female Grand Heavenly Immortal Emperor of this generation, let's talk about it after you enter the top 10. Little fatty, is it okay for me to call you that? Xiao Manxia's tone was also indifferent, but her words were sharp. She even hinted that Miao Xian would only be qualified to compete with her if she entered the top 10. After she finished speaking, she turned to Qin Hao and said without giving Miao Xian a chance. You know me? Qin Hao frowned and asked. Although Xiao Manxia looked at him with a smile and a little curiosity, Qin Hao couldn't help but feel a sense of disgust. It was a sense of disgust that came from his subconscious. Xiao Manxia didn't expect the fatty to not give her any face. She was slightly stunned, and the smile on her face turned cold. She said, I didn't know you before, but don't I know you now? Moreover, I know that you are very strong. Number 8, it shouldn't reflect your true strength at all. You have hidden a lot, right? Even if you are not as good as Qin Tianhe, the difference shouldn't be too big, right? But it doesn't matter. I have nothing to say to you. It's almost a waste of time. Don't you think so? Xiao Manxia's eyes flickered as she stared at Qin Hao. Obviously, she was one of the people who knew about the relationship between Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe. Indeed, she was the second strongest person in the Shao clan's Daluo Golden Wonderland. Her strength was terrifying, almost on par with the number 1 Xiao Jiutian. Xiao Jiutian was one of the strongest contenders for the championship, and his combat strength was only second to Qin Tianhe. She also had the strength to enter the top 3. Therefore, before the competition began, Starry River Monarch had purposely told her and Xiao Jiutian about Qin Tianhe. He told them that if they encountered Fatty Li Yuan or 7th Anima Qin Qi during the competition, they could only defeat them and not kill them. He wanted them to be left for his favorite disciple, Qin Tianhe. Otherwise, Qin Tianhe would suffer a great loss. You know quite a lot. Qin Hao was slightly surprised, but at the same time, his eyes became cold. He didn't expect Qin Tianhe and the Star River King to have reached the point where they didn't hold back. Of course. My relationship with Tianhe is very good. Whether you're willing or not, it's useless. You're really pitiful. I can only sympathize with you. Is that so? Then you just wait and see. Qin Hao said coldly. He resisted the urge to challenge Xiao Manxia. Why did he hide his aura? It was nothing more than to prepare for the final battle. Qin Tianhe was very strong, especially after integrating with the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th Animus. As for Qin Hao, he had just integrated with the 8th Anima, Qin Ritian. Coupled with Qin Tianhe's growing faith power, Qin Hao couldn't be sure what the final result would be. Therefore, he chose to keep a low profile at this time to avoid exposing too much and allowing the opponent to be more prepared. Wipe my eyes for, what? Xiao Manxia, who was speaking complacently, suddenly had a change in expression. Instantly, his aura became several times colder, and the gaze he used to look at Qin Hao became extremely cold. You actually eliminated my little brother? Is that strange? With my strength, it's easy to kill him. Sparing his life is already good enough. Qin Hao was too lazy to pretend and said proudly. Good. Do you dare to challenge me? You're mine. Just then, Miao Xian, who had been silently watching the two, suddenly said, Top 10. I'm afraid I won't be able to meet you even if I enter the top 10. Why don't we do it here? He's mine. Hiss. Suddenly, without any warning or even a trace of energy fluctuation, a figure appeared out of thin air. He was wearing a green robe and had a tall and slender figure. His face was like jade, and the corners of his mouth naturally hooked up in a charming arc, giving people an indescribable sense of carefreeness. Not only the surrounding cultivators, but even Xiao Manxia and Miao Xian were surprised. Little 7, Helian Wuzi cried out in surprise. Chapter 14:14. Chen Hao's seventh anima had unexpectedly met Chen Hao here. Chen Qi stared straight at Chen Hao. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. The battle intent around him soared crazily. His black hair danced wildly, his clothes fluttered, and his incomparably fierce battle intent soared into the sky. The fish that escaped the net, Chen Qi. I can't let Li Yuan fuse with him. If that happens, it will undoubtedly increase the pressure on Chen Tianhe. Although he is very strong, it's better to be safe than sorry. After all, Li Yuan is the main body. I can't underestimate him. Almost instantly, Xiao Manxia confirmed Qin Qi's identity and thought of a possibility. This was not what the Star River King wanted to see, and it was not what she wanted to see either. Chen Tianhe, at first sight, she was attracted by his handsome and arrogant temperament, powerful strength, and talent. Wasn't he the ideal Dao companion she had always dreamed of? She, with her outstanding talent, was the strongest female genius of the Xiao family in the great world of Xiandi. She was on par with Xiao Jiutian. In the great world of Xiandi, it was not easy to find a young genius that could catch her eye. This was something that could not be helped. She could only blame her talent for being too strong. Her voice was rare, and her song was too high. How could she find a Dao companion that was compatible with her? She had countless followers, but none of them caught her eye. But the appearance of the handsome and powerful Chen Tianhe had undoubtedly caught her eye. Moreover, the Star River King was also very supportive, so she had nothing to hesitate about. Thinking of this, Xiao Manxia suddenly snorted and said, Miao Xian, don't get involved. Li Yuan, if you are a man, challenge me. Of course, if you don't have the guts and admit that you are not as good as me, I can let you fight him first. At most, your strength will increase by a little. Xiao Manxia said after careful consideration. She had to admit that this was a rather helpless situation for her. As the top-seeded contestant in the group, she could not take the initiative to provoke and could only passively fight. Therefore, she could only use words to provoke Chen Hao. If the other party did not listen to her, then she had no other way. She did not dare to do anything that went against the rules. Even if he was a direct descendant of the Xiao family, she did not dare to do so. Otherwise, she would face the fate of elimination. He's mine. You stupid woman, get lost. If you have the guts, why don't you take the initiative to attack me? No balls. What do you mean by gutless? I have a lot of seeds. If you need them, I can give you billions of seeds. Chen Hao didn't even look at Xiao Manxia, but his arrogant and unruly ridiculed her, and his gaze was fixed on Chen Hao's main body. Cough cough, after seeing Chen Qi appear, Chen Hao, who had been slightly excited and pleasantly surprised, couldn't help rubbing his chin and coughing twice when he heard Chen Qi's lawless and unscrupulous words. Damn, this is really awesome. Xiao Manxia was, after all, a direct descendant of the Celestial River King. Moreover, she was undoubtedly the most favored junior of the Celestial River King. However, Chen Qi didn't care about her at all. He even dared to tease her about sending her billions of seeds. Regardless of whether others dared or not, Chen Hao himself did not dare to do so. After all, he still had to pull out a tooth from the tiger's mouth. There was no need to make the Celestial River King unhappy at this time. Deity, don't say that you didn't give me a chance to fight. If that's the case, I will never submit to you. You have to believe that my obsession can definitely interfere with you. At the same time, Qin Hao, who was staring at Qin Hao, said to Qin Hao through voice transmission. Qin Qi was different from Qin Hao. He had no one to help him seal the origin link with Qin Hao's main body. If Qin Hao wanted to use the origin to control him, he would be like Qin Ritian, unable to resist. Because of this, Qin Qi had to remind him. He wanted to fight with Lu Hui, Qin Shui, Helian Wuzi, and the others to know that he, Qin Qi, was not inferior to deity. This was what he wanted to prove the most, and it was also his obsession. Buzz. The second round has begun. At this moment, the space suddenly shook violently, and the host's magnificent voice rang out. Qi. Sword lights suddenly bloomed, and the incomparably fierce sword intent directly enveloped Xiaomanxia. Damn fatty, you, deity, are you a fucking idiot? It's obvious that he's provoking you. It's fine that you've become a fatty, but your head has also become a pig's head? How? Miao Xian, Qin Qi, and Helian Wuzi exclaimed at the same time. It was just that the words they said were not the same. Miao Xian was angry. She did not expect Fatty to be so ignorant. She had decided to help him, but Fatty did not appreciate it, and instantly took the initiative to provoke Xiaomanxia faster than her. Was he not courting death? Xiaomanxia's evaluation score was higher than hers, and naturally, she had her strong points. Even she could not guarantee that she would win. However, Fatty actually fell for his provocation. Qin Qi even scolded directly. Deity's actions were too stupid. In his opinion, Fatty was an idiot with an empty head, full of water. Only Helian Wuzi was surprised. She did not blame Qin Hao for being reckless. In her opinion, since Qin Hao did this, he naturally had his reasons. You don't have to care about me, I'll decide my own matters. Qin Hao said to Miao Xian through telepathy, not at all grateful. At the same time, he roared at Qin Qi, you're the idiot, pig head, I'll do whatever I want. How can a woman provoke a man's dignity? Fuck. Fuck your sister. Fuck your sister, just you wait, after I deal with her, I'll give you a chance to have a fair fight. I'm afraid you'll be fucking dealt with. Fuck. Bullshit. So smelly, tisk. Tisk your sister. Boom boom boom. TSK TSK TSK. Rumble, the competition had clearly already begun, yet the 10,000 plus cultivators in the 10th group area where Qin Hao was at were dumbstruck. All of them had forgotten that the competition had begun, and they formed a circle as they watched the 8th ranked expert, Li Yuan, brazenly challenge the number 1 golden immortal realm genius of the Shao clan, Xiaomanxia. As they listened to Fatty and Qin Qi's vulgar curses, they simply didn't dare believe this was real. Strong. The only feeling they had was that they were strong. Li Yuan and Xiaomanxia were strong, but as for who was stronger, no one could tell in a short time. But one thing was for sure, the strength that Li Yuan erupted with made the few seated contestants in front of him blush with shame. 8th? There was probably no problem for him to be ranked 3rd. As for who was stronger between Fatty, Miao Xian, and Xiaomanxia, it was not something that everyone could determine. Only after a real battle would the result be known. His combat skill is actually so powerful. Xiaomanxia was extremely surprised. Fatty fell for her provocation so easily, which made her very excited. Her goal was very simple, not to kill Qin Hao, nor to win against Qin Hao. She only wanted to rely on her own strength to trap Qin Hao. She was the top-seeded contestant, so even if she did not go all out in the battle, it was not against the rules. She only had one goal, to make Qin Hao unable to fuse with Qin Qi. That would be considered as helping her Dao companion, Qin Tianhe. Chapter 14-15. However, when the battle started, Xiaomanxia was shocked to find that the fatty, who was not very strong in terms of absolute strength, was able to use battle techniques to an unimaginable level. His combination of divine ability laws and ancient martial arts had reached the point of perfection. She was unable to control the situation for a while. No wonder Qin Tianhe was so cautious. He didn't hesitate to use his connections to fuse a few lives in the group battle. Otherwise, he might really be in danger. However, this is also good. It doesn't matter if we are evenly matched until the end. Xiao Manxia thought to herself. Her absolute advantage in terms of strength made her very confident. She believed that she would have no problem keeping Chen Hao busy, but Xiao Manxia suddenly realized that the surrounding cultivators had no intention of starting the competition. They were just looking at her and Fatty. One had to know that there was no time limit. If everyone did not start the competition, the cultivators would not be eliminated. If they were not eliminated until there were only 100 people left, their group's competition would not end. How could this be? What are you looking at? The battle has started. Are you idiots? If anyone keeps looking, don't blame me for being rude. Xiao Manxia immediately scolded. Voila, the crowd dispersed. Only then did they realize that the battle had started. Boom boom boom, chi chi chi. The battle finally broke out. How can this be? How can this be? It's over, it's over. Outside the barrier, in Group 10's spectator area, Chen Wanxiang's face was conflicted. His previously high-spirited expression was now extremely gloomy. He was filled with worry and disappointment as he watched the battle in Group 10. Xiao Manxia, at this moment, even Ruolan and Ruoxian, who were very confident in Chen Hao, frowned as they stared at Xiao Manxia in the battle. Xiao family, Xiao Manxia, the most dazzling genius of the Xiao family in the past 10,000 years. Her name was already known throughout the world. She was much more famous than Xiao Mantian. She was someone who had the potential to enter the top 3. After all, although she was ranked 10th, she was a direct descendant of the Xiao family. The Xiao family's inherited techniques were so powerful that no one in the entire the great world of CND could compare to them. However, Chen Hao, who was ranked 8th in the group, was actually fighting with Xiao Manxia, who was ranked 1st. This made them confused and worried at the same time. However, the two of them were not worried that Chen Hao would be eliminated. Could it be that someone told Xiao Manxia that Fatty eliminated her brother Xiao Manyun? Even if that's the case, the initiative should be in the hands of the Fatty. It must be Xiao Manxia's provocation, right? Fatty is very smart. How could he be provoked? That's right, that's the strange part. After all, the reason why he restrained his aura was to conceal his true strength in preparation for the upcoming battle. Now, let's not even talk about whether he can defeat the powerful Xiao Manxia. Even if he can, he will be exposed. No matter what, he shouldn't fight. Is that Fatty's 7th anima, Qin Qi? Rulan suddenly saw a figure standing proudly within the raging energy. What shocked Ruolan even more was that the figure was madly devouring the raging energy. At the same time, there was a huge fluctuation in the surrounding energy of heaven and earth, which was converging toward the figure. 7th brother. At this moment, Chen Nan and the others also saw Qin Qi standing proudly amidst the raging energy. Yes, Teacher Rulan. That's Big Brother's 7th anima, Qin Qi. What an abnormal guy. He can actually have an epiphany while watching the battle. Rulan and Ruoxian were shocked. The unobstructed transmission of aura from the barrier allowed the two of them to clearly lock onto Qin Qi's aura. It's not strange. 7th brother is my big brother's 1st anima. Epiphany is a common occurrence for him. It can happen at any time. His strength is probably not much weaker than my big brother's. Moreover, since he met my big brother here, he must want to fight my big brother. Chen Nan said. I know what's going on. Ruoxian, who seemed to be lost in thought, suddenly understood after hearing Chen Nan's words. Ah. Xian, what's going on? Complete anima and occasional epiphany. In other words, unless Qin Qi reaches the level of Fatty's main body, his cultivation speed will always be at a rapid pace. This is the complete connection of the origin. Even if Fatty and Qin Qi are in two different worlds, they can't isolate this mysterious influence. Could this be the highest level of the 9 anima arcane technique? It must be. Furthermore, Fatty has discovered it. And at this time, Fatty must know that he can't control Qin-Chi through the origin. And Qin-Chi wants to have a showdown with him to prove himself. There's another point. It's very likely that Qin-Chi's strength is stronger than Xiao Manxia. In this case, Fatty will choose to fight with Xiao Manxia first. That's not right. What does this have to do with Xiao Manxia? Fatty can totally fight with Qin-Chi first. Since it's 9 animus, no matter the result, he will be stronger after the fusion. Rulin was puzzled. But Fatty hopes to be stronger after the fusion. You see, he's completely used his strongest combat skills and Dao Law. The only thing he's keeping is absolute power. I can be sure that he's deliberately showing it to Qin-Chi. And Qin-Chi stepped into the epiphany so quickly at this time. Furthermore, it's while watching the battle. This proves this point even more. Ruo Xian said in a deep voice. Oh. That's possible. Xian, I find that you're getting smarter and smarter. What are you saying? I'm smarter than you, okay? Moreover, I'm proficient in, cough cough. I'm familiar with the 9 animus spell. Ruo Xian's expression changed slightly. Fortunately, Rulin didn't seem to notice. She curled her lips and stared at Ruo Xian, saying, if you're not proud, we're still good sisters. Alright, because Qin Hao took the initiative to provoke Xiao Manxia, Group 10 became the target of most of the cultivators again. At the same time, they also became the target of the celestial realm. However, this time, Li Yuan and Xiao Manxia from the Xiao clan were not the only ones who attracted everyone's attention. Qin-Chi, who was in a state of enlightenment, and Miao Xian, who had merged with heaven and earth like a sword, and Helian Wuzi, who was standing near Miao Xian and surrounded by chaotic celestial light, and no one dared to provoke her. There was no doubt that Qin-Chi, Miao Xian, and Helian Wuzi were powerful. The fact that they could stand near Qin Hao and Xiao Manxia without fear of the raging energy turbulence and the terrifying pressure of the fighting spirit was enough to prove their strength. At this time, who would dare to challenge them? In the celestial realm, Qin Hao and the other two were excited to see their son become the focus of attention again. However, the terrifying battle between the two made them worry for Qin Hao. They were especially worried when they heard the surrounding people's comments about Xiao Manxia. Fortunately, Qin Hao, who seemed to be weak in terms of absolute power, didn't fall into a disadvantageous position at all with his terrifying combat skills. Chapter 14-16. On the rostrum. Huh. He's actually fighting with Xiao Xia. After the competition officially began, the Celestial River King and other top figures of the immortal Emperor Great Thousand World used their extremely powerful spiritual senses to directly envelop the 10 groups, sensing the battles within. The Celestial River King was slightly surprised as soon as the competition began. What's going on? Little Fatty is challenging the top seed? Qin Taishu was also surprised and thought to himself. Strange, little Fatty doesn't seem like an impulsive person. As for the specific reason, they did not know. After all, they had only sent out their divine senses to investigate when the competition officially began. However, Qin Taishu did not say much to the Star River King. After all, they had already made it clear in the matter between Fatty and Qin Tianhe that this battle would not affect anything. Good. Wonderful. Hey, Big Fatty Li Yuan's sword skills and ancient martial arts are combined so perfectly. Amazing. As expected of the guy with the best comprehension ability. Little Fatty's comprehension of sword skills has also reached the minute subtlety realm. A true genius. It seems that his evaluation ranking is much lower. Even if he is not as good as Xiao Manxia, he should not be too far off. It's a pity that the two of them are fighting. Yes, it's a pity. I hope they can last until the end. As long as there is no winner, it will not affect both of them. The old man on the rostrum also discussed at this time. There were only 10 groups in this round. The top seed of any group was evaluated to be in the top 10. However, someone dared to provoke them, which naturally attracted everyone's attention. Epiphany. He can actually achieve epiphany. And in such a short time. Xiao Manxia, who was in the middle of the battle, was extremely shocked after discovering Qin Chi's fluctuations. At the golden immortal realm of the great all-embracing heaven, even for a top genius like her, epiphany was something that could only be encountered by chance. However, Qin Chi had only watched her battle with Fatty, and in such a short time, he had actually stepped into the state of epiphany. What shocked her even more was that at such a close distance, the raging energy turbulence, the aftermath of the Tao Law, and the terrifying explosion did not affect Qin Chi at all. Instead, he could crazily devour the chaotic energy. This was simply inconceivable. Furthermore, as the battle continued, Xiao Manxia discovered something that made her feel even more terrified. Li Yuan, who was clearly in a state of intense battle, actually didn't feel the slightest bit of exhaustion. With such astonishing recovery ability, Xiao Manxia could no longer remain calm. This won't do. If this goes on, I'm afraid I'll be defeated by him as my energy is depleted. That was absolutely unacceptable. This year's ranking competition is my last time participating. No matter what, I have to truly step into the top 10. I absolutely cannot lose. Xiao Manxia pondered. Then I can only defeat him as quickly as possible. It had to be said that Xiao Manxia felt like she was riding a tiger. She really did not expect the fatty to be so strong. His combat skills and recovery speed could be described as abnormal. If she continued in this state, she would be tortured to death by Fatty. That was something she could not accept. She could only choose to defeat the Fatty quickly. Although this went against the Celestial River King's intentions, at this point, she had no other choice. She could not allow herself to be eliminated, right? I didn't expect your strength to exceed my expectations. Unfortunately, the gap in absolute strength cannot be made up for. Alright, it's about time to end it. Take this. Boom. Xiao Manxia's aura suddenly more than doubled. She suddenly shouted and shot out a palm. Suddenly, countless afterimages appeared. Chi chi chi. In an instant, strands of majestic and terrifying energy spiraled out like strands of milky white silk. They spiraled and intertwined with each other, releasing extremely profound and powerful auras that condensed in front of her. Her aura was extremely terrifying. Heavenly Silkworm 9 Transformations. Someone in the crowd suddenly cried out in surprise. Heavenly Silkworm 9 Transformations was one of the strongest inherited skills of the Shao clan's direct descendants. It was also the Shao clan's ultimate skill that had not appeared in the Jianghu for countless years. Because it was more difficult to cultivate than the Devouring Void, many direct descendants of the Shao clan could not comprehend it in their lifetime. The requirements for soul control and comprehension were too high. Heavenly Silkworm 9 Transformations, as the name suggested, had a total of 9 levels. Once this skill was used, one would need to control millions of silk-like energy at the same time in an extremely strange and complicated way to condense the corresponding runes. If one did not have a strong soul control, one would not be able to divide one's mind into millions of strands at the same time, let alone precisely control each strand of energy. Similarly, without an abnormal comprehension, one would not be able to comprehend such a complicated rune combination. But one had to admit that once one mastered it, even if it was only the first level, the power would be extremely shocking. Unfortunately, because of its harsh requirements, countless direct descendants of the Shao clan flinched and did not even have the courage to try. This was also the reason why it had not appeared in the cultivation world for many years. It's the almost extinct Heavenly Silkworm 9 Transformations. Amazing. Really amazing. I didn't expect that someone in this generation of the Shao clan had finally mastered it. Dahua Li Yuan is going to stop here. What a pity. I really don't know why he provoked Xiao Manxia, who was ranked first in the group. Some of the powerful cultivators in the crowd said. As for Qin Wanxiang, even Ruolin and Ruoxian, who were very confident in Qin Hao, especially Ruoxian, when they saw Xiao Manxia use the Heavenly Silkworm 9 Transformations, which was about to lose its inheritor, their hearts thumped and they became nervous. Heavenly Silkworm First Transformation. Fierce wind. Xiao Manxia's cold voice resounded through heaven and earth. Her hands, which were full of afterimages, suddenly drew a light screen in front of Chen Hao. In an instant, countless silk-like energy condensed into a huge and complicated rune. Following her loud shout, endless raging winds swept up and suddenly blasted towards Chen Hao. At this moment, Xiao Manxia's forehead blossomed with a crystal-clear light. Strands of light connected with the heavenly silkworm first transformation she had released. Her figure was like a graceful and enchanting spider demon, covered with silk-like energy. Her entire person became extremely terrifying. Heavenly silkworm second transformation, wind and cloud movement. Rumble. Before the heavenly silkworm first transformation could explode, Xiao Manxia's aura underwent another shocking change. As she released the second transformation, a terrifying explosion immediately sounded. The rune with an even more terrifying aura rapidly condensed again. The energy of heaven and earth was attracted, and the sky changed color. Chen Hao's pupils suddenly shrank as he sensed the terrifying aura. The two streams of energy that came one after another, and they soared several times in power. He could not help but be shocked. For a moment, Chen Hao did not have any way to break through it. It seemed that he could only rely on absolute power to resist. But this was not what Chen Hao wanted. Chapter 14-17. Chen Hao did not know about the Xiao family's 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm, but when Xiao Manxia shouted out the first and second transformations of the heavenly silkworm, Chen Hao thought of the term, 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm. And he could conclude that Xiao Manxia had more than 2 transformations. Then how powerful would the later moves be when they were displayed? Chen Hao's pitch-black eyes shone with 2 resplendent rays of golden light. His rapidly circulating divine sense and shrinking pupils actually caused Chen Hao to unconsciously activate his innate ability, the fiery golden eyes. Buzz! At this moment, his entire mind was shaken. All distracting thoughts disappeared, and time seemed to have stopped. At the same time, his state of mind, which had merged with all things in the world, was automatically activated. His mind was completely merged with the laws of Xiao Manxia's mystique. He did not let go of any trace of energy. Under his eyes of fire and gold, everything was magnified, fixed, and operated rapidly in his mind. Chen Hao's body was separated from his mind and did not integrate with everything in the world. Instead, he was like a willow catkin in the wind, dancing with the energy of Xiao Manxia's attack. The soft sword skill resisted it, like pulling silk from a cocoon, weakening the terrible attack bit by bit. Good. Wonderful. Wonderful. When the elders on the rostrum saw this scene, they could not help but exclaim. Such exquisite combat skills, not to mention the fatty was only from the Daluo Golden Wonderland, but even the geniuses in the Cutting Path perfected immortal realm could not reach such a level. But the fatty had done it. They had never seen such a situation before. What a good fatty. He can dissolve my 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm with his combat skills under the disadvantage of absolute power. The Star River King could not help but praise. His eyes lit up slightly. A cultivator from the Daluo Golden Wonderland could integrate the ancient martial arts and divine sense law to such a perfect level and use them to such an exquisite level. He could not help but be shocked. He had to admit that the little fatty's talent in ancient martial arts and comprehension was better than his disciple Qin Tianhe's. But overall, he is still not as good as Tianhe. There is nothing to regret. The Star River King knew very well that after Qin Tianhe merged with the fatty, he would become the dominant one and obtain the fatty's abilities. However, he would not be able to inherit the fatty's comprehension and use of combat skills. After all, these were subjective things. If Qin Tianhe's consciousness took the dominant position, he would lose the fatty's strengths in this aspect. As Xiao Manxia's attacks became more and more powerful, Chen Hao's expression did not change in the slightest. However, his dark eyes became brighter and brighter, and the speed of his mind became faster and faster. His aura became more and more ethereal. Under Xiao Manxia's powerful attack control, he was purely on the defensive and did not attack at all. However, it seemed that he was like a catkin in the wind, and he was fully capable of counterattacking. Although it might not be effective, he did not even want to try. It was as if he was immersed in a state of enjoyment of Xiao Manxia's attacks. Those with lower cultivation naturally did not know what was going on. They thought that Chen Hao was completely suppressed by Xiao Manxia. However, the experts who were watching gradually discovered through their delicate perception that Chen Hao's mind was constantly splitting as the battle progressed, turning into threads and threads, constantly integrating into Xiao Manxia's silk-like energy. This discovery shocked all the experts. Could it be that the little fatty wanted to break the powerful 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm? Was this possible? It was already inconceivable that he could resist and dissolve its energy. How could it be possible that he wanted to comprehend the mysteries of its runes and break it? This was the 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm. Although it was only the first 2 transformations, it was so complicated that it made people flinch. Moreover, it had nothing to do with one's realm. Whether one could comprehend it completely depended on one's talent and comprehension. He's actually so strong. The more Xiao Manxia fought, the more shocked she became. She was well aware of the power of the 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm. She had thought that she could take down Chen Hao with just 2 transformations, but the reality was that he was not injured at all. To be more precise, she still had not found a way to detonate it. Her opponent was like a cotton that could not be exerted. It made her feel that she had power but nowhere to exert it. Break! Chi! 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 Chen Hao suddenly shouted. In an instant, countless threads of silk-like sword qi gushed out. He did not dodge, but directly integrated into Xiao Manxia's 2 transformations of the heavenly silkworm, and then, boom! Rumble! A terrible explosion occurred. Chen Hao and Xiao Manxia's bodies exploded and retreated at the same time. Chen Hao looked confident and excited, while Xiao Manxia looked shocked and horrified. She did not expect that. In any case, she did not expect that someone could crack the 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm. This was a real crack, not a solution. Break, it was a break targeted at the nature. With a much weaker energy, it could easily destroy the hidden latch in the rune and destroy it. Is this the real strength of the one with the highest comprehension? The 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm. The little fatty can comprehend the way to crack it in such a short time. It's incredible. The big shots on the rostrum were also shocked. The Star River King frowned and stared at Chen Hao with a touch of pity in his eyes. It was a pity. Break, Chen Hao could crack the 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm in such a short time. He did not expect this at all. Such a monstrous talent was destined to survive between him and Qin Tianhe. He could not help but feel sorry. Just these 2 transformations? If that's the case, then you'll lose. Swish! Swish! Along with Chen Hao's arrogant and excited voice, strands and dense sword lights directly covered the sky and covered the earth as they pressed down towards the shocked Xiao Manxia. Good, good, I didn't expect you to be so strong. However, do you think you can defeat me after cracking 2 transformations? In your dreams. First transformation of the heavenly silkworm. Swish! Swish! Second transformation of the heavenly silkworm. Third transformation of the heavenly silkworm. Fourth transformation of the heavenly silkworm. 8 transformations of the heavenly silkworm. Clatter, the onlookers were in an uproar. Xiao Manxia, who was shocked by Chen Hao, did not hold back this time. She frantically urged her mind and energy and directly launched the 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm without the slightest gap. She did not stop until the 8th transformation. A terrifying and mysterious aura filled the whole space. Under such an aura, the practitioners in the battle had to retreat again. Even Qin Qi, who was in the state of epiphany, was affected and jumped out of the state of epiphany. He, Helian Wuzi, and Miao Xian all activated their protective Gang Qi to stabilize themselves. Humph, I'll show you my real strength. 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm, I am the king. Hiss. As Xiao Manxia said the words, the 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm suddenly merged into her body. Chapter 14:18. In an instant, Xiao Manxia's aura began to soar crazily. The energy fluctuations that were originally like mountains and seas suddenly disappeared completely, and the entire space became dead silent. The integration of the 9 runes caused Xiao Manxia's body to emit a milky white luster, as if she had turned into a cocoon. The highest realm. The highest realm of the 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm. Not to mention the onlookers in the Grand Mist Supremacy realm, even the true immortal kings and the top experts on the rostrum widened their eyes in shock. Amazing. I didn't expect that there would be someone in the Shao clan who could cultivate the 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm to the highest realm. It's really incredible. Yes, as far as I know, only the Star River King in the Shao clan can do it. After the Star River King, no one else has been able to cultivate it to the highest realm. I didn't expect Xiao Manxia to be so strong. In an instant, countless exclamations came from the mouths of some elders. Poof! Poof! At this moment, 2 poof sounds suddenly came from Xiao Manxia's shoulders. Immediately, a dazzling 7-colored light gushed out and enveloped the entire world, breaking out of the cocoon and becoming a butterfly. The crowd exclaimed again. 2 huge rainbow-colored wings grew out of Xiao Manxia's shoulders. Condense. At the same time, Xiao Manxia's red lips opened slightly and she shouted softly. Buzz! Buzz! A 7-colored light suddenly tore through the void, carrying unparalleled power and endless mysteries as it charged toward Chen Hao. At this moment, Xiao Manxia, who was standing in the void, was like a god who controlled the life and death of all things. The word, tut, was like announcing Chen Hao's death sentence. Countless people, including Miao Xian, Helian Wuzi, Chen Qi, Ruolan, Ruo Xian, Chen Nan, and the others, became extremely nervous at this moment, and their hearts were in their throats. At this moment, Chen Hao's eyes suddenly shrank, and his expression became extremely solemn. Immediately, boom! An aura that was like mountains and seas suddenly gushed out, and a majestic and pure essence, energy, and spirit directly rushed into the sky and pierced through the firmament. Buzz! Clang! At the same time, a clear sword cry, like a dragon's roar, resounded throughout the world. A true immortal treasure sword. Almost instantly, all the spectators were certain that Chen Hao had brought out an immortal artifact sword. Moreover, its aura was extremely powerful. Clearly, it was not an ordinary immortal artifact. Ridiculous. When Xiao Manxia saw this, she didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, her expression became one of disdain. Fairy artifacts were indeed powerful, but Chen Hao was just a Daluo Golden Wonderland cultivator. Restricted by his own realm, it was impossible for him to bring out the true power of a fairy artifact. It was like a 6-year-old baby holding a kitchen knife. What kind of power could he bring out? Whether or not he could even carry it was a problem. As a direct descendant genius of the Shao clan, the soft armor, accessories, and items she wore from head to toe were all magic treasures that were most suitable for her cultivation and strength. Moreover, they were all activated passively and automatically coordinated with her to launch the strongest attack. It was utterly not something that an immortal artifact that wasn't suitable for her could compare to. The most suitable one was the strongest. This was the truth, and it applied everywhere. Similarly, when countless top experts saw little Fatty bring out an immortal artifact sword, they had the same opinion as Xiao Manxia. The only difference was that they didn't think it was ridiculous. After all, no academy could compare to the treatment of a direct descendant of the Shao clan. Even Zhulu Academy couldn't compare. Little Fatty, who was only a disciple of Dahua Academy, was lucky enough to have an immortal artifact. How could there be an expert refiner who would pay such a huge price to refine a magic treasure that was most suitable for him? That was impossible. After all, immortal artifacts could be borrowed and passed down. However, a magic treasure that was specially refined for Chen Hao was only suitable for Chen Hao. No academy would pay such a huge price. Wang! Chi chi chi, Chen Hao drew out his sword directly. In an instant, rays of sword light poured out. Great Five Elements art. What a pity. Although the Great Five Elements art is strong, it's only when the five elements are combined into one. However, even if the five elements are combined into one, it's only one move. It's definitely not stronger than the power of the 9 changes combined into one. The moment Chen Hao drew out his sword, some experts made a judgment. However, what surprised everyone was that Chen Hao actually relied on his powerful control ability to execute the Great Five Elements art and didn't attack the arrogant Xiao Manxia who had transformed into a birdman. Instead, he stood still in front of him. It seemed slow but was actually fast. Like a net made of sword light, what was even more shocking was the circulation of the five elements. How is this possible? Exclamations of surprise burst out. Using what he learned and how to use it flexibly, so powerful. The concept of the heavenly silkworm 9 changes, the will of the massacre sword Dao, and the great five elements art, 3 combined into one. Almost instantly, countless cultivators saw that little fatty had actually used the concept of the heavenly silkworm 9 changes and forcefully combined it with the great five elements art and the massacre sword Dao that he was proficient in. Very obviously, after deciphering the first and second changes of the heavenly silkworm 9 changes, Chen Hao had grasped the concept of the heavenly silkworm 9 changes, which was the essence. Of course, this was not because Chen Hao had mastered the heavenly silkworm 9 changes. That was impossible. No matter how strong Chen Hao's comprehension was, it was impossible for him to do it in such a short time. After all, it was one of the most difficult absolute arts of the Shao clan to master. However, Chen Hao had grasped the concept of this absolute art and used it flexibly. Using other similar runes that he could release, he turned the great five elements art he released into the first move of storing. It was just like how the heavenly silkworm 9 changes could be released first several times without exploding, waiting for the 9 changes to be completed before combining them. Without a doubt, this was very shocking. However, at best, this is equivalent to using the ultimate move consecutively, right? The heavenly silkworm 9 changes is one change after another. It was originally created for the purpose of combining them into one. After superimposing, the power would increase exponentially. However, the great five elements art only has one move. The runes are completely similar in nature, but they repel each other. It's impossible to superimpose them, let alone increase their power exponentially. Many masters thought to themselves. However, in just a moment, their thoughts were destroyed by Chen Hao's shocking move. Buzz! Buzz buzz buzz! It was the same great five elements art, but the sword principal attribute contained in it was completely different. What was even more surprising was that the trajectory of the five elements had also undergone a subtle change. There was no sign of mutual repulsion, and it merged into one with the previous sword light. It's Aura Sword. Buzz! Buzz buzz buzz! It was a long story, but in fact, it happened in an instant. Chen Hao did not pause at all. He released his ultimate move consecutively, and in an instant, he had used the great five elements art 5 times. This is the limit of fusion. Sensing the operation of the sword light, Chen Hao knew that he had pushed himself to the limit of the great five elements art. All along, the grand five elements art had been one of his trump cards, and the continuous execution of ultimate moves was the trump card of his trump cards. Unfortunately, every time he did this, Chen Hao would feel that something was off, yet he was unable to pinpoint exactly what was wrong. Chapter 14:19. Today, when he saw Xiao Manxia's 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm, Chen Hao knew what was wrong and thought of a way to improve the great five elements art from cracking the first and second transformations. Now, he had succeeded. At most, he could fuse 5 swords. That was the limit of what he could do now. Could he resist Xiao Manxia's 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm? Even Chen Hao was not sure. However, now that he had chosen to do this instead of completely exposing his absolute power, he could only continue. At least he was sure of one thing, he would not die. What? You're defeated. Boom! Xiao Manxia, who had successfully broken out of the cocoon, was confident that she could easily defeat the fatty at this moment. Therefore, after she fused the 9 transformations, she was not in a hurry to defeat her opponent in one move. Instead, she waited for the fatty to condense his ultimate move. That way, she would be satisfied. However, she did not expect the fatty to condense the extremely terrifying Great 5 Elements Art rune in an instant. Moreover, it was the fusion of 5 swords, 5 types of sword principles. At this moment, how could she dare to wait? Good, good. Smart. This little fatty can definitely be described as heaven-defying. Some of the true immortal kings and top experts in the cutting path perfected immortal realm could not help but exclaim at this moment. The Great 5 Elements Art, 5 times. Every time it seems that the 5 elements have reached a perfect balance, but the trajectory of the movement is based on metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. It allows the 5 swords to form a great 5 elements cycle outside of the 5 elements cycle, and they are all interconnected. From small to large. Amazing, really amazing. This requires extremely precise energy control to do. Countless people were shocked. It's not certain who will lose. Tut! Chen Hao shouted, and the great 5 elements sword light rune in front of him shot out. Chi! Boom! Rumble, Chen Hao's sword light and Xiao Manxia's 9 transformations of the heavenly silkworm finally met. In an instant, there was a terrifying explosion. The space condensed by countless true immortal kings actually collapsed in a small area. Heaven and earth lost their color, and with the 2 of them as the core, a black spatial storm was formed. Fist breaking the void. Rumble. Rumble, a series of earth-shattering explosions erupted continuously, and the destruction caused became more and more terrifying. At this moment, even Miao Xian, Chen Qi, and Helian Wuzi had no choice but to quickly retreat. The space collapsed and distorted. The pitch-black energy wreaked havoc as if it wanted to devour everything. No one could clearly see Chen Hao and Xiao Manxia at this moment. When the devastating explosion and energy turbulence completely disappeared, a fat figure stood with a sword in his hand. Even though blood flowed from the corner of his mouth and his entire body was covered with wounds, as though he had been bombarded by landmines, his aura was extremely full. Clearly, he was at his peak condition. What did this mean? It would automatically recover after the battle. This was the rule of the competition space. As long as the opponent was eliminated, the winner would immediately be fed back to his peak state. It was like the feedback after the great heavenly punishment. That was indeed the case. This was because everyone also saw a figure protected by boundless golden holy light. It was Xiao Manxia. The protective light of the token. Her face was filled with unwillingness and anger, but there was no room for regret now. She had lost. She, who claimed to be the first female Grand Luo among the immortal emperors, and to be precise, she was indeed the most promising female Grand Luo in this batch. However, she had lost to the fatty. Countless onlookers widened their eyes in shock. The cultivators in the immortal world space who were watching from the square all had their mouths agape. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. One had to know that just a moment ago, the expert in charge of the live commentary was saying that the fatty was done for, and how terrifying the Galaxy King Shao clan's 9 transformations heavenly silkworm was, and so on. However, at this moment, the one who had lost was Xiao Manxia. Li Yuan of the Great, countless people murmured this name. They remembered this fat figure, chubby face, and the most beautiful part of his body. His eyes, pitch black and deep eyes. This is our boss. This is our boss. Ha ha ha. What do you mean by unbelievable? This is called unbelievable. Brothers, I feel like our dark days are about to descend upon us again, that's for sure, but I'm happy to live like that. Lan Feng, if you're not happy, you can go away. Ha ha ha. Fuck, I have a cultivation partner now. What's there to be afraid of? This is the problem that the few of them have to consider. It's hard to find a cultivation partner beside our boss. Lan Feng looked at Zhou Qinglong and the other few bachelors among the 9 geniuses. Chen Wanxiang, Mo Shilin, Ruolan, Ruoxian, and the others were also very excited. When they saw Xiao Manxia display the 9 transformations heavenly silkworm, they felt a faint sense of uneasiness. Ruoxian was especially worried. Even though she was very confident in Chen Hao before, she still felt that he could not win. How strong would the 9 transformations heavenly silkworm be? However, Chen Hao had won. The Galaxy King frowned slightly at this time. He did not expect the fatty's original body to shock him again and again in such a short period of time. This was something that had not happened in tens of millions of years. He was the most talented person, so what kind of genius could really surprise him? Even Qin Tianhe had only made him look at him a little. However, the little fatty's original body, whose aura and absolute power were obviously much weaker than Qin Tianhe's, had exceeded his expectations several times in a row. He had to take it seriously. Such a monstrous existence. Even if he is not as good as Tianhe now, his potential is still stronger than Tianhe's. If he falls like this, it will be a pity. The original body is the original body after all, and indeed has the talent that derivative life does not have. If the Galaxy King thought to himself. Sword King Chen Taishu was inexplicably excited. Even he did not expect Chen Hao's talent to be so powerful, especially in terms of comprehension and fighting talent, which were unbelievably strong. Moreover, he had limited himself to the scope of sword principle. If Chen Hao completely let go and did whatever he wanted, what would happen? He is not a pure sword puppet, but he can practice the secular sword principle, which is all-encompassing. His sword principle can be extremely pure. People who don't know the situation will definitely think that he is a real sword puppet. But he is not. He has integrated the great 5 elements art into his swordsmanship. In such a short period of time, he can comprehend the fusion method similar to the 9 transformations heavenly silkworm. Also, only the Qin family bloodline can really practice the carving heart sutra to the extreme. He has also practiced it to the extreme. Such talent. Could it be? Sword King Chen Taishu suddenly thought of a possibility. He also thought of his younger brother, Chen Wuliang. However, he had to admit that Chen Hao's talent was not comparable to Chen Wuliang's, even if Chen Wuliang had a congenital martial emperor body. Moreover, Chen Wuliang had been defeated by his martial emperor body before he reincarnated. But what about Chen Hao? Chapter 1420. Even though Chen Taishu had only seen Chen Hao fight twice, every single move of Chen Hao's contained various Tao laws that were unfathomable and of various attributes. This was sufficient to prove that Chen Hao didn't specialize in a Tao that was suitable for him at all. However, Chen Hao gave Chen Taishu the feeling that he was at ease and wasn't affected by the various Tao laws at all. He comprehended various Tao laws to the limit and cultivated them to the limit. Simply put, Chen Wuliang's soul force and comprehension were unable to control his martial emperor body, resulting in a lack of mastery. On the other hand, Chen Hao was at ease. Despite the various Taos, he was still able to master them. How big was the gap between their talents? This kid has hidden his strength well. If I didn't know that he was on par with Xian, and that he was facing Xian before he reached the peak realm, who would have known that he had the strength to fight against Qin Tianhe, who was ranked first? Now that he has reached the peak realm, his absolute strength has not been fully exposed. Plus, his battle skills can only be described as abnormal. There shouldn't be a problem. The pupil has surpassed the master. No, it's more of the little fatty's innate talent. Even I was inferior to the little fatty back then. What is the relationship between me and the little fatty? My daughter. My daughter. He was born from my daughter. No one knew that at this moment, Princess Ying was more excited than anyone else. Because, at this moment, she had learned everything about Chen Hao, Yi Lan, and her own daughter through Si Xian. How could she not be excited? At this moment, Princess Ying was more concerned about Chen Hao than anyone else. Not only was he her beloved disciple, but he also had a close relationship with her daughter. He was the key to finding her daughter. How could she not be concerned? After learning the details from Si Xian, Princess Ying had decided to do her best to protect Chen Hao's life, even if she had to fall out with the Xing He king. She could not allow him to be devoured by Chen Tianhe, who had been controlled by evil thoughts. Inside the competition space, Chen Hao, who still hadn't revealed his absolute strength, had never thought that his battle would bring such a shock to everyone, especially the Star River King, Chen Taishu, Prince Ying, and the other top experts. They saw unparalleled potential and infinite hope in him. Is it my turn? Chen Qi took a deep breath. Despite the vastness of Mount Pear, he still walked proudly toward Chen Hao and said excitedly. You think you have hope? Unless I'm dead, I won't give up hope. Even if there is only a sliver of possibility. Very good. As expected of the lifespan that I have completely comprehended. You are also very good, as expected of my original body. I underestimated you before. You are indeed stronger than me in every aspect. My epiphany and the speed of my advancement are all under your influence. Even though I feel like I comprehended it on my own. I just found out too. I also just discovered that I don't have the ability to control you with my origin. So, I can't not give you a fair chance. Perhaps when I gave birth to you, I wanted you to become me so much that we really didn't distinguish between each other and became equal existences. Is that so? It doesn't matter. I've always been living in your shadow. Even if I win, I'll still love you, like what you like, and do what you want. If I lose, what you do is also what I want to do. It's just that I'll drag out an ignoble existence. Now that I have my own consciousness, I naturally want to make decisions for myself. No matter what, meeting you in advance is an opportunity for you and me. Fusion is the key, don't you think? That's right. I promise you, I won't erase any of your thoughts. Chen Hao said. Let's talk about it after you win. Don't underestimate me. Make your move. Chen Qi said. However, although Chen Qi said he would make his move, his aura didn't soar. Instead, it was strangely restrained. Only the space between his eyebrows began to tremble slightly. Come to me. Chen Hao said. You are big and real. Aren't you afraid that I will cheat as a controller? I know myself. Chen Qi smiled slightly. If Chen Qi was still very jealous of Chen Hao before and wanted to fight to the death with him, then at this moment, after a short communication with Chen Hao, Chen Qi didn't have any jealousy. He saw the amazing talent of the original body, sensed that his epiphany came from the original body, and saw himself in Chen Hao. After the conversation, he was even more certain of this. Their hearts were connected. Chen Qi felt that he could guess what the original body was thinking. Similarly, Chen Hao could naturally guess what he was thinking. And this was under the premise that the two of them didn't have a connection at all. This made Chen Qi suddenly feel that it wasn't important whether he could defeat the original body or not to prove himself. He was the original body, and the original body was him. The only difference was that they each had their own independent consciousness and different experiences over the years. Chen Qi had a feeling, or rather, both Chen Hao and Chen Qi had a feeling that their fusion would be flawless. Just as Chen Qi had said, what the original body loved was what he loved. What the original body wanted to do was what he wanted to do. Even if there were some ideas that belonged to each of them, they were born from different experiences. Only through fusion, no matter who was the dominant consciousness, they would accept the other's ideas. Very well, I also know myself. Chen Hao also smiled. Unfortunately, with his fat appearance, his smile was on a completely different level compared to the handsome Chen Qi. However, at this moment, no one cared about the fat man's appearance. The 2 consecutive live broadcasts and the terrifying strength that the fat man showed, especially when he defeated Xiao Manxia, made the fat man's image imperceptibly carry a dazzling halo. In the eyes of young women, he bloomed with endless charm. At this time, Chen Hao and Chen Qi did not hide their words and clearly passed into the ears of the audience. However, except for those who were familiar with Chen Hao, many people were confused by the conversation between the two. Even some of the masters on the rostrum who did not know what was going on were a little confused by the conversation between the two. However, after hearing the conversation between the two, the Star River King fell into contemplation, as if he had understood something. This was a realm that even his nine-life profound technique did not have. Independent existences, no one can control the other through the origin, but their hearts are connected and they appreciate each other. Qi. Chen Hao's glabella suddenly shook, and a bright light shot directly into Chen Hao's glabella. At first, countless people exclaimed, thinking that Qin Qi had used some kind of killing move, which made the fat man unable to react. However, when the bright light directly merged into the fat man's glabella, nothing terrible happened. Chen Hao and Qin Qi both smiled and closed their eyes at the same time. Chapter 14:21. Fight. But Chen Hao, who didn't want to expose his true strength, and Chen Hao, who didn't want Chen Hao or himself to expose their true strength, chose Chen Hao's mind space as their battlefield. Only now did everyone understand the fatty and Qin Qi's fighting style. Although Qin Qi wasn't even a seed master on this level, everyone already recognized his powerful image when he entered an epiphany and stood proudly near the battle. Naturally, they wouldn't think that Qin Qi was trying to break a rock with an egg. At this time, Hellion Wuzi directly went to the two of them, releasing a terrifying aura to protect them. Although Miao Xian, who was frowning slightly, didn't get close, she didn't leave either. She just stood there motionlessly, paying attention to the fatty and Qin Qi, her state of mind inexplicably fluctuating. He faced her indifferently, but according to her request, he fought with sword principles from beginning to end. Moreover, he displayed a combat strength that was completely beyond her imagination. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many nameless monstrous geniuses in this year's competition, she was almost certain that Chen Hao could enter the top 10 with sword principles and fulfill her request. Then, does this damned fatty value me more than him? Miao Xian couldn't understand. She only knew that her mood at this moment completely went against the sword puppet's straightforward character. At this moment, she couldn't see through her own heart. Chi chi chi. Boom boom boom, the other cultivators' battles only became more intense at this time. In other words, this was the real beginning. The top 1,000 was one of the requirements for a first-class academy to be promoted to a top academy. There was no doubt that anyone who qualified this time would be a true monstrous genius. Every group of 10,000 people would determine the top 100, and 10 groups would form the top 1,000. In this round, the top 100 people in each group would eliminate an average of 99 people. In other words, the top 100 people would have to win an average of 99 battles in a row. Failure in any battle would lead to elimination. However, according to the number of victories you had, your position in the top 100,000 would be determined. Therefore, at this time, there were no more peak battles that no one wanted to miss. All the cultivators began to go crazy, especially those who felt that they had a chance to enter the top 1,000 but were not certain. There were even some who directly challenged several people at the same time. By doing so, if they were eliminated, their ranking would be higher. Unfortunately, other than the 10th group, after watching Chen Hao and Xiao Manxia's battle, the others' battles became dull and boring. Even if the people fighting were already experts in the top 100,000, it still wouldn't work. The gap was too big. It wasn't that there weren't any real experts, but even if there weren't any opponents who were on par with them. After all, not everyone was like Chen Hao and Xiao Manxia. Under normal circumstances, they would pick on the weakest opponents. As long as they could advance, it would be fine. There was no need to choose a strong opponent. Not only would they expose their true strength, they might also be eliminated like Xiao Manyun and Xiao Manxia. That would not be worth it. Therefore, most of the cultivators were still staring at Chen Hao and Qin Qi curiously. There were many teachers and cultivators from the Grand Mist Supremacy realm in Qin Qi's academy who came to watch the battle. At this moment, they were all worried for Qin Qi. Although the conversation between Chen Hao and Qin Qi confused everyone, it also made one point clear. The fatty was the original body, and Qin Chi was the fatty's life, but it was a completely independent life. The supreme realm of the 9 lives profound technique. Did it matter who won or lost? For most people, it didn't matter at all. Whether the fatty won or Qin Chi won, they would become a stronger existence. However, it was very important for the University of Dahua and Qin Chi's academy. Especially for the University of Dahua, the fatty was their academy's guarantee to enter the top academy. If he lost, the others would have a much lower chance of entering the top 1,000. They might fall short. Therefore, at this time, and in a situation where they couldn't see the battle at all, Chen Wanxiang and the others were more nervous than when the fatty and Xiao Manxia fought before. Time passed by minute, and every minute was a kind of torture for Chen Wanxiang and the others. The first group's competition was over, and the top 100 were decided. The fourth group's competition was also over. The competitions of the groups ended one after another. Until all 9 groups had ended, the 10th group where Qin Hao was still not decided on the top 100. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or the cultivators present were too shrewd. At this moment, there were a total of 101 people left, including Qin Hao and Qin Chi. No one was fighting anymore. They just quietly watched Qin Hao and Qin Chi, who were standing face to face with their eyes closed. Obviously, the battle between Qin Hao and Qin Chi was the last one. Only when they had a winner would the top 100 be decided. It's not over yet. Damn, what's going on? When the space barriers of the other 9 groups disappeared and merged with the spectator floor, only the 10th group was left. Everyone's line of sight was also unobstructed to see the 10th group's space, which had shrunk to a very small size. Many people were shocked by what they saw and asked in surprise. How? Brother how? TSK TSK TSK. When the peerless figures saw the people in the 10th group, they immediately rushed to the front of the barrier and cried out in surprise. Unfortunately, in the 10th group's space, no one could hear their voices. Similarly, they could not see their figures. Brother how, little 7. Don't. It was also at this moment that a voice suddenly cut through the void. It was filled with horror. Little Hui. Chen Shui and the others immediately recognized the owner of the voice. TSK TSK TSK. In an instant, Chen Shui and the other girls rushed toward Lu Hui, who was so frightened that she seemed to have gone crazy. No one knew how terrified and frightened Lu Hui was when she saw Qin Hao and Qin Chi standing face to face and being watched by everyone. Although she had long known that this scene would happen sooner or later, and it would happen during this period of time, when she really faced it, her heart hurt as if it was being pricked by needles. One was the man she loved the most, and the other was the 7th life of the man she loved the most. However, they were children that she had brought up single-handedly. There was no love, but there was family. She really did not want Qin Chi to disappear just like that and become one with the man she loved the most, Qin Hao. Qin Chi was already living in her heart. How could she accept him disappearing just like that? However, she could not stop any of this. No matter how she shouted, Qin Hao and Qin Chi could not hear her. However, at this moment, Qin Chi suddenly opened his eyes and looked straight in Lu Hui's direction. Little Hui. Ah! Ah! Cries of surprise rang out one after another. Even Lu Hui, who was crying, was stunned. Her mind was blank, and her delicate body trembled. Qin Chi had awakened. What did that mean? You should have seen me, right? I know you're sad. In your heart, I'm like your son, right? Hee hee. I know that I can't replace him, and he can't take my place in your heart. However, I'm him, and he's me. I understand. I hope you understand too. I've lost. I'm very happy. See you later. Crash! As soon as Qin Chi finished speaking, his body turned into specks of light like flowing sand and merged into Qin Hao's glabella. Chapter 1422. Buzz. The barrier of the 10th group dissipated and the top 1,000 were decided. The next round of the competition was divided into 10 groups of 100 people each. the top 10 would advance to the next round. However, the format of the competition was different from before. It was a round-robin competition for 100 people. In other words, any two cultivators would have to fight each other. Finally, the top 10 cultivators with the highest points would advance to the top 100. We did it. Ha ha ha. A top academy. Our academy has become a top academy. Ha. We are also students of a top academy. The pressure is so great. When Fatty opened his eyes, the students of the University of Daoyang cheered. Fatty had made it to the top 1,000, and he was the only one in the almighty immortal realm of the University of Dahua. Ao Qian, Ling Feng, Xue Fian, and Wani Shui had not made it to the top 1,000, but this was expected. After all, the top 1,000 was the top 1,000 from the great world of CND. To be able to enter the top 1,000, even if it was the last place, one had to be a true genius. Otherwise, there was no hope at all. Ao Qian, Ling Feng, Xue Fian, and Wani Shui had not displayed the full circle of the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Similarly, among the girls, only Helian Wuzi, Qin Shui, and Lu Hui had entered the top 1,000. Other than Helian Wuzi, who was in the same group as Qin Hao, Qin Shui and Lu Hui had only narrowly advanced. Have they merged? It seems that their luck is not leaning towards me. However, it doesn't matter. You are the main body, so your luck naturally has an innate advantage. Even if it is my luck, it will still cover you. Only by merging with you, I will be the master of my own destiny. All the luck will belong to me. I know that you must be hiding something. Unfortunately, it is useless to me. The final victory will belong to me, Qin Tianhe. Xiao Hui, you are mine. Qin Tianhe said in his heart as he stood proudly and stared at the fatty from afar, as well as the weeping little nurse, Lu Hui, who threw herself into the fatty's arms. Disciples who have advanced, please step onto the 4th level immediately. Buzz buzz buzz. Not long after, the host's voice sounded. Immediately, the top 1,000 cultivators who had successfully advanced rose into the air and stepped onto the next level under the envious gaze of the crowd. Chi! 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 Rumble. The moment the 1,000 cultivators stepped into the 4th level, 500 arenas that contained powerful spacetime laws appeared in the space of the 4th level, divided into 10 regions. There were 50 arenas in one area. The 4th group. Phew. After Fatty, Helian Wuzi, Qin Shui, and Lu Hui, who was still immersed in sadness, stepped into the 4th level, they were directly teleported to the area marked with the 4th group. As for the 3 girls, they went to another group. This time, although there were no seeded contestants, the contestants' combat power was still taken into consideration during the grouping. When the strong met, the strong would be eliminated. This was something that had to be avoided as much as possible, although it was impossible to completely avoid it. After all, some people would provoke others, some would be unconvinced, and some would hide their strength, causing the assessment to be inaccurate. For example, the fatty who was ranked 8th was stronger than Xiao Manxia who was ranked 1st. It was impossible to completely put an end to it, especially since there were many newly emerged experts in this batch. It's the round-robin stage. Everyone in the group will fight each other. I can finally fight to my heart's content. 99 matches. After letting out a long sigh, Qin Hao revealed a look of excitement. Qin Hao, who had already stepped into the great circle of the Daluo Golden Wonderland, needed a large number of different opponents to train himself. Moreover, due to his abnormal talent, the opponents he needed were not necessarily as strong as Xiao Manxia. It was fine as long as they were not too weak. Every cultivator had their own shining points, especially at this stage. They were the top 1,000 monsters in the great world of CND. Even in the top academies, they were the top monsters. Without a doubt, this was what Qin Hao liked the most. Unfortunately, what? You admit defeat? Are you kidding me? The battle hasn't even started. I'm sorry, brotherly. I'm not your opponent. Ah. You can't be. You admit defeat too. If Brother Li can defeat Xiaomanxia, there's no need for me to expose myself. I admit defeat. Our dean believes that you will definitely enter the top 10. I admit that I'm far inferior to you. I'm sorry. After the start of the competition, Chen Hao was automatically sent to one of the 50 arenas in the fourth group. He thought that he could fight to his heart's content for 99 consecutive battles, but he did not expect that the opponents he encountered would admit defeat continuously, and it lasted until the end. All 99 people admitted defeat. In a group, no one dared to fight with him. Chen Hao was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He almost suffered internal injuries. However, this scene, in the eyes of many people, was natural. Obviously, although there were no seeded contestants in this round of competition, the allocation of group members according to the assessment of strength was fixed. Chen Hao was undoubtedly the first master in the fourth group. This also meant that the latest assessment of his combat strength ranking was likely to be fourth. He had defeated Xiaomanxia, who had the potential to enter the top 10 of the great world of CND, the first female Daoyuo Jingxian. Moreover, he had the 9 Lives Mystic Technique, the Star River King's unique technique, and the doppelganger Chen Qi, who was a disciple of a top academy, and could use the Great 5 Elements art to an incredible level. How many people could defeat him? Since they knew that they were no match for him, why fight? At this point, there were no weaklings. Most of the battles were lost, so there was no need to fight. If they fought, they would not be embarrassed to perform badly in front of everyone. However, if they wanted to perform well, they would have to reveal their strongest strength. That would not be good for the following battles. It was because of this that they chose to admit defeat. Almost the same scene appeared in the first and second groups. In the first group, no one dared to fight Qin Tianhe. In the second group, no one dared to fight Xiao Jiutian, the first Daoyuo Jingxian of the Xiao family. In the other groups, the new generation Sword King's disciples Qing Yang and Miao Xian, Kong Ying, who had stepped out of the Emperor Star's secret realm, the first Daoyuo Jingxian of the Jade Maiden Palace, the first Daoyuo Chisue of the Snowdrift Academy, and the first Daoyuo Buchen of the Parkway Academy. Most of their opponents also chose to admit defeat. Those who did not admit defeat were all experts who had hidden their strength. Although they could not defeat them, the terrifying strength they displayed made the latecomers admit defeat. At the end of the competition, the top 10 of each group were decided. There was a total of 100 people. There was no need to calculate, and everyone could roughly guess the top 10 list. Even if there was a discrepancy with the final result, it would not be too big. All 10 of them were first in their groups and had won all their matches. I predict that the top 10 list will be ranked according to their strength. First, Qin Tianhe, second, Xiao Jiutian, wrong. I think Xiao Jiutian will definitely be first. He is the first Daoyuo of the Xiao family, a true disciple of the Star River King. He is not someone Qin Tianhe can compare to. Chapter 1423. Ha, don't you know that Qin Tianhe is also a direct disciple of the Star River Monarch? Of course I know. But Qin Tianhe's surname is Chen, and he became the Star River Monarch's disciple not long ago. How can he be compared to Xiao Jiutian? The reason why his evaluation is higher than Xiao Jiutian is because of his powerful faith energy. But that power doesn't truly belong to him. After all, it's an external force. It has a huge flaw in a life-and-death battle. That's true. But I still think that Qin Tianhe is strong. Look, it won't be long before the results come out. In any case, the two of them must have occupied 2 spots in the top 10, and they should be first and second. Don't forget about the Jade Maiden Palace's Ning Jing. She hasn't made a move yet, and she's still the first in her group based on her aura alone. There's also the Sword Monarch's disciples, Qing Yang and Miao Xian. They were all second in the previous seeded contestants, but they're all first in their groups. They've obviously hidden a lot. There's also Snowdrift Academy's Buchen. He can't be underestimated either. Yeah, it's hard to say. Li Yuan defeated Xiaomanxia and fused with the powerful Chen Qi. The fourth group should be ranked fourth, and there's a possibility for them to compete for first place. There's also Kong Ying. Like Li Yuan, he's also an existence that led his academy to the top. But he's more low-key and was overshadowed by Li Yuan's brilliance. But it's hard to say how strong he is. Li Yuan's battle with Xiao Manxia might be his strongest, but he's only ranked 4th. As for the others, they haven't revealed anything yet. As for Kong Ying, it's hard to say. We can't see how strong he is, and there's no information for us to refer to. Yeah. In any case, Chen Tianhe, Xiao Jiutian, Ning Jing, Qing Yang, Miao Xian, Bu Chen, Li Yuan, and Kong Ying will be in the top 10 if nothing unexpected happens. As for the other two who entered the top 100 with undefeated records, their strength is relatively weak. There are bound to be many challengers, so the chances of them being a threat to Li Yuan and Kong Ying will depend on whether or not there are any hidden super experts in the future. There must be. This time, only the top 10 of the group will advance. Some people don't care about which place they advance. It's just a temporary surrender. Let's wait and see. After the top 100 were determined, both the cultivators who were watching at the scene and the cultivators who were watching in the immortal realm space began to buzz with discussion. The alliances of the cities in the immortal realm space, the internal affairs of the major forces, and the major chambers of commerce even began to place bets. Contestants, please enter the 5th floor. When the center of the martial arts practice field turned into a huge ring, the host's voice sounded again. This time, Chen Hao rose into the air alone and stepped into the 5th level under the excited gazes of the crowd. Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, and Lu Hui all stopped outside the top 100 and were eliminated. It was already very good that Chen Shui and Helian Wuzi could achieve such results. As for Lu Hui, the soul of all living things, she was defeated because of her terrible mood. Otherwise, with the immortal emperor absolute art that she had awakened, there was still hope for her to enter the top 10 of the group. In other words, she could enter the top 100. For this round of competition, the top 10 contestants will be evaluated. For the remaining 90 people, whoever thinks that they have the strength to defeat any one of the top 10 can challenge them. If they succeed, they will replace them and become one of the top 10. If they fail, they will lose the qualification to enter the top 10. When no one challenges the top 10 will be determined. At the same time, the rankings of the remaining 90 people will be announced. If you are not satisfied with the rankings, you can challenge the top 10 contestants. When there are no more challengers, the top 10 ranking battle will officially begin. Now, I will announce the top 10 contestants. The rankings are in no particular order: Chen Tianhe, Xiao Jiutian, Ning Jing, Li Yuan, Miao Xian, Qing Yang, Bu Chen, Kong Ying, Bai Hua, Lu Fei. When the top 100 contestants stepped into the 5th floor, the host began to announce the method of this round of competition and the top 10 contestants. Although the host said that the rankings were in no particular order, the order in which the names were announced was based on the combat strength of the contestants. De Hua, Li Yuan, was ranked 4th. The top 10 contestants, please enter the ring and be challenged. Wait a minute. Suddenly, a voice sounded in everyone's ears and interrupted the host. Voila! Suddenly, both the audience and the immortal world space went into an uproar. Everyone looked at the source of the voice in surprise, the rostrum. Star River King. What's the matter? Countless people were puzzled. They didn't know why the Star River King interrupted the host at this moment. This was an extremely rare occurrence. Even Prince Ying, Chen Taishu, and the other big shots on the rostrum looked at the Star River King in confusion. Star River King, what orders do you have? Although the host was puzzled, he didn't dare to show any displeasure and asked respectfully. Put the contestant ranked 11th in the top 10. Huh? No way, right? What does this mean? The Star River King's words made countless people puzzled. Only Prince Ying, Chen Hao, Miao Xian, Qing Yang, Rulan, Ruoxian, and the others who were familiar with Chen Hao understood what the Star River King wanted to do. Old Man's personal disciples, Chen Tianhe and De Hua, Li Yuan, are just 2 lives in the 9 lives mystic technique. They are actually one person. Voila! The Star River King didn't give the crowd too much time to wonder and directly announced, causing a huge uproar. Even the top 100 experts looked at Qin Tianhe and Fatty Li Yuan in shock. Moreover, it is the highest level of the 9 lives mystic technique. There is no difference between the original body and the avatar. And this time, they will fuse together. You have seen Qin Qi fused with Li Yuan before. There are also a few lives that you haven't seen, fused with Tianhe. The two of them will be the final fusion. No matter who wins or loses, they are the same person in the end. Therefore, the current top 10 is only the top 9. Let's pick another one and let Qin Tianhe and Li Yuan fight in advance. That way, the top 10 will be the real top 10. The ranking will also be more realistic. Celestial River King said. The Star River King's words made everyone's eyes widen. The top 10 contestants, except for Miao Xian, Qin Yang, and Xiao Jiutian, became dignified. After all, Qin Tianhe was already ranked first. If he fused with the fourth, how strong would they be? Most of the people from the Dehua College who didn't know about this situation were so excited that their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. In their minds, Fatty was already a superior existence. Now, they had reached the point of looking up to a mountain. They couldn't describe their feelings at all. Incredible. They could only say that it was incredible. At the same time, the cultivators who were familiar with Fatty and liked him also felt a sense of worry. If Fatty lost, he would be fused with by Qin Tianhe. In that case, would Fatty still be Fatty? The most important thing was, would Fatty still be considered a member of the Dehua College? They didn't think that Fatty could defeat Qin Tianhe, who was ranked first in the assessment of the First Academy. Chapter 1424. What the Star River King said is right. In that case, Qin Tianhe and Li Yuan will fight alone and become one. Do you two have any objections? Although the host was surprised, he made a decision quickly. Qi. That's exactly what I want. Qin Tianhe rose directly into the air and appeared on the ring in a flash. His whole body was blooming with a bright and sacred golden light, like a banished immortal. His eyes were calm and confident as he stared at Qin Hao and said lightly. At this moment, all eyes were focused on Qin Hao. The fat man frowned slightly and stared straight at Qin Tianhe, as if thinking about something. Li Yuan, do you have any objections? The host asked. No. I just didn't expect it to be so sudden. Qin Hao said. He did not expect the Star River King to know so much and do this. Of course, the most important thing was that he did not understand the purpose of the Star River King. Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe's situation was a very private matter in Qin Hao's view. After all, the Star River King sealed Qin Hao's origin for Qin Hao and forcibly stripped his avatar. It was not a glorious thing. But the Star River King said it in public. Although he secretly changed the concept and did not say that he did it, but that Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe had cultivated the 9 lives mysterious technique to the highest level, Qin Hao still found it incredible. Is there a difference between earlier and later? Qin Tianhe said proudly. Of course there is. The corners of Qin Hao's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a smile as he looked straight at Qin Tianhe and said without showing any weakness. What's the difference? Qin Tianhe knew Qin Hao's character very well. After all, he was still himself. Even though he knew that Qin Hao was definitely not showing weakness by saying this, he still asked. The difference between you dying early and dying late. Sure enough, as Qin Tianhe guessed, the smile on Qin Hao's face disappeared and his eyes became fierce. His fighting spirit soared as he took a step forward. The next moment, Qin Hao had already arrived on the ring. However, what made Qin Hao frown was that he suddenly realized that there was a terrifying aura on Qin Hao's body. Although it was very, very hidden, it still appeared clearly in his senses. Invincible general trend? How could he still be so confident in front of me? Is that even possible? Qin Tianhe was slightly puzzled. As the second anima, he was the only one of Qin Hao's true nirvanic rebirth. His cultivation had been built up step by step. Now, he was in charge of Chen Hao's most powerful force, the power of faith. How strong was the faith of all the cultivators in the ancient chaos world? Since the unification of the ancient chaos Great Thousand World, Chen Hao had become the ruler of the ancient chaos Great Thousand World. Chen Tianhe could feel the power of faith growing stronger all the time. The problem now was that he was restricted by his own realm. Otherwise, the power of faith that he could use would be absolutely terrifying. He had the sea, but he could only summon rivers. In this case, it meant that he had an endless supply of power of faith. In the same realm, who could be his match? More importantly, he had fused with the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth animus. The Mad Devil realm, the Tao manifestation immortal fruit tree, the tree of life, and the spiritual fountain sea. All of them were heaven-defying existences. At this moment, he was confident that he could defeat any genius in the same realm. But at this moment, Chen Hao was still able to produce an invincible general trend in front of him. Where did Chen Hao's confidence come from? He couldn't figure it out. Furthermore, based on his understanding of his true self, he had to be cautious. It seems that you really did have some amazing fortuitous encounter. Wang. A resplendent, sacred golden light suddenly gushed out from Chen Hao's body. At the same time, a boundless will of slaughter spread out. What? Chen Tianhe turned pale with fright. Resplendent, sacred golden light. If that wasn't the power of faith, then what was it? One had to know that he had completely taken over the power of faith. How could Chen Hao still have more? And his aura wasn't any weaker than his? The others were even more shocked. Not only was Chen Hao suddenly releasing the aura of the power of faith, but it was also Chen Hao's appearance. Although they knew that Chen Tianhe and Fatty Li Yuan were at the highest level of the 9 lives profound technique, their appearances were completely different. However, when they couldn't sense the slightest bit of disguise, they knew that one of them had to be in disguise. Or rather, both of them were in disguise, and it was the ultimate form of the great change art. However, when they saw Fatty Li Yuan's figure disappear and was replaced by a figure and appearance that was exactly the same as Chen Tianhe's, they were still incomparably shocked. They couldn't tell what exactly they were feeling. The figure, appearance, and aura were exactly the same. However, Chen Hao, who had just returned to his true self, felt more real. Just like what Miao Xian had said, he was very fake. When they didn't compare, they didn't feel it. However, when Chen Hao returned to his true self and appeared in front of them, they could feel the difference. So this is Fatty Bro's true appearance. Ha! When Fatty Bro was tested, we thought that he had gained intelligence from the will of slaughter that he inherited. The cultivators of the University of Dahua widened their eyes in shock. How did you regain control of the power of faith? Chen Tianhe couldn't help but ask. Do you still need to ask me such a simple question? Wang. Chen Hao said arrogantly and disdainfully. As he spoke, his body trembled once again, and a majestic vitality suddenly bloomed. Golden and green light intertwined, causing his cold and handsome face to look demonic. You. Chen Tianhe pointed at Chen Hao, feeling tongue-tied. What is the origin? Is the control of the origin really as simple as the suppression of the soul consciousness? What a joke. I was able to give birth to you and them. Do you really think that I borrowed their talents? Chen Hao's gaze turned cold as he stared at the shocked Chen Tianhe. This was exactly the feeling he wanted. Arrogant. Imposing manner. Number 1 in evaluation. All bullshit. He was the true self. How could he let his doppelganger overshadow him? If you are arrogant and insufferably arrogant, then I will be even more arrogant and insufferably arrogant than you. Whether it is true combat strength or external competition, I will not be at a disadvantage. He wanted to completely trample him under his feet. Wang. Following Chen Hao's words, his body trembled once again. In an instant, it caused countless cries of surprise. Even the old man on the rostrum was so shocked that he sucked in a breath of cold air. Thousands of Tao laws tumbled. The laws of heaven and earth interacted with it, becoming one. Connate Tao embryo. Tao manifestation immortal fruit tree. Many experts could tell at a glance that something was wrong. You actually managed to condense them after you managed to see through their origin? There might be problems with the updates in the next 2 days. If there is a break in the updates, it will be updated on the 19th. Sorry, I have something to do overseas. Chapter 1425. Including you, Qin Hao said as he stared at Qin Tianhe. Phew. Qin Tianhe let out a long breath as if he was trying to expel the shock and pressure in his heart. He then said, I have to say that you're very strong. I knew that you weren't that simple, but you still shocked me today. Is that so? Qin Hao replied with a question in a proud manner. The battle intent in his body was still rising, and his pitch-black and deep gaze was sharp like a sword. Yes. However, do you really think that's all I'm capable of? Or do you think that I only relied on the power of faith to fuse with their power? If that's really the case, then you're too naive. You should know whether I've been naive or not. I'm not you anymore. You wouldn't have been in the past, but it's hard to say with the current me. It's not your style to reveal so much before the battle, but you've revealed it this time. What does that mean? You're guilty. Ridiculous. There's nothing ridiculous about it. When you saw my shock, you thought that I was afraid, and your aura grew stronger. Isn't that right? I can tell you clearly that you are just deceiving yourself. Qin Tianhe looked straight into Qin Hao's eyes. His voice became louder and louder, resounding through the heavens and earth. The Star River King, King Ying, the New Sword King, and countless cultivators from the great world of CND, especially the top 100 experts, were watching this scene with a solemn expression. Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe's auras were already so terrifying that even the top 100 experts felt great pressure. However, it was still rising. Strong. Extremely strong. Only Xiao Jiutian, Ning Jing, Qing Yang, Miao Xian, Bu Chen, and Kong Ying were able to maintain a calm expression. They were the 6 people that everyone had predicted to enter the top 10, excluding Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe. Ha! Qin Hao chuckled at Qin Tianhe's words. Can we begin? Since you're in a hurry to die, then let's begin. Boom! Boom! Clang clang! After the 2 of them finished accumulating their power, they did not waste any more time. Almost at the same time, they unleashed their auras without restraint and drew their swords. Chi! 2 beams of sword light bloomed at the same time. The same move, the same speed, the same power of faith gathered at the tip of the sword, and the sword stabbed out. The only difference was that Qin Hao's golden sword light of faith was enveloped in a layer of demonic blood color. That was the blossoming of his killing intent. On the other hand, Qin Tianhe's sword of pure faith. It was pure, divine, and seemed capable of purifying all evil in the world. It contained boundless and endless energy of faith. Boom! Rumble, ah! This is... What happened? Countless young and inexperienced cultivators in the immortal realm, as well as those who were watching the battle at the scene, widened their eyes in surprise and cried out in surprise. In the sealed arena, when the 2 swords collided, the golden light shone brightly, causing the sky and earth to lose their color. The terrifying destructive power caused the entire Deerchaser Peak to tremble violently, with endless energy tumbling. But this was not the reason why the young disciples were surprised. The real reason was that everyone saw the image of the mountains collapsing and the earth cracking, with dust and smoke billowing. How was this possible? This was the arena condensed by the most powerful true immortal kings on Deerchaser Peak. Let alone Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe, who were cultivators from the Daluo Golden Wonderland, even true immortals or ordinary true immortal kings could not damage it at all. How could Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe damage it? Ein Master. At the same time, a few experienced and knowledgeable experts let out different exclamations of surprise. Strong. Incredible. It's just Daluo Jingxian, but he has already awakened his Ein Master. What's more incredible is that he can spontaneously combine yin and yang in the battle. Yeah, this year's competition is really strong. Look at Xing He King and King Ying, they don't seem surprised. Xiao Jiutian, Ning Jing, Miao Xian, Qing Yang, and Kong Ying are not surprised either. This means that Chen Tianhe and Li Yuan are not the only ones who have awakened their yin masters and can use them. Indeed. A real great era is coming. Perhaps, in the near future, a real immortal emperor will be born from this batch of geniuses. Yeah, that's very likely. The discussion of countless experts made the young cultivators understand what was going on. The image of the mountains collapsing and the earth cracking was not a complete illusion, but a world of yin masters. In the terrifying explosion, Chen Hao's blood-red killing intent was completely annihilated. It did not break through Chen Tianhe's golden sword light and disappeared completely. However, Chen Hao's sword light was also unable to break through Chen Hao's sword light. Qi. This result seemed to be within the expectations of Chen Hao and Chen Tianhe. They did not stop and attacked again. At the same time, they approached each other at high speed. Clang! 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 In an instant, dense sword light and boundless sword intent wreaked havoc as the two of them fought in close quarters. Each sword strike was stronger, faster, and trickier than the last. At this moment, even Miao Xian, Qing Yang, and Sword King Chen Taishu, the three real sword puppets, were shaken and their eyes lit up. This was the collision of the solitary sword arts. They had no moves and no styles, and they used offense as defense. What kind of concept was that? More importantly, this was only a sword skill. The divine ability runes that the two of them had fused into their sword skills were also refreshing and eye-opening. Chen Tianhe was not limited to the magical runes of the sword Dao. The magical runes he formed were ever-changing and wonderful. Chen Hao, on the other hand, was a pure combination of the sword Dao and the solitary sword arts. Although there were some limitations, he was not at a disadvantage. For a moment, even Sword King Chen Taishu could not tell who was stronger. But at this moment, Star River King frowned slightly and said softly, "I didn't expect him to be so strong." "Brother Xiao, who are you talking about?" Chen Taishu could not help but ask. King Ying also looked at Star River King at the same time. Both of them knew very well that Star River King's strength and vision were better than theirs. The only existence in the great world of CND who was known as a half-step immortal emperor was not just a title. Of course it's Li Yuan. Of course, Tianhe is him, and he is Tianhe. Brother Chen, Ying, I won't hide it from you. Before the battle, I had 100% confidence in Tianhe, but now I'm a little confused. To be exact, whether it's Tianhe or Li Yuan, they are both beyond my expectations. And Li Yuan, who is the original body, has continuously exceeded my expectations. Giving birth to life was built on the foundation of breaking through the origin. This exceeded my expectations. This required an extraordinarily high level of comprehension talent, but not only did he achieve it, he even fused his own thoughts into the foundation of breaking through the comprehension, which was his Tao. This is amazing. And now, he has imprisoned himself in the sword Tao, but he can compete with Tianhe. Naturally, it means that he is stronger. After all, he can't be a pure sword puppet. Chapter 1426. That's true. Chen Taishu said. Both of them are using the same sword skill. It should be the nearly lost ancient martial art, solitary sword art, right? Star River King looked at Sword King Chen Taishu and said. That's right. The confrontation of solitary sword art, under the premise of equal strength, is a competition of combat talent and perception. In this regard, Tianhe should be a little inferior. Star River King said. Chen Taishu and King Ying both nodded slightly. When the same kind of formless technique and the same kind of attack as defense met, it naturally depended on who performed better on the spot. What depended on the performance? Combat talent and perception. The stronger one's combat talent, the more accurate and faster one's judgment and reaction would be. They would always be able to subconsciously make the strongest and most effective response in the shortest time. And the stronger one's perception, on the other hand, would be the first to break through the shackles under the premise of a difficult fight. Is that so? Although what Brother Xiao said makes sense, I feel that Li Yuan may be a little inferior to Qin Tianhe. Li Yuan's power of faith is like duckweed without a root. He has only comprehended the origin of the power of faith, but does not have a strong source of faith to support him. But Qin Tianhe is different. I can feel that he has an endless supply of power of faith. So, as time passes, Li Yuan's consumption has become the foundation of his shackles. I'm afraid this is not something that can be compensated for by combat talent and perception. He. It seems that you don't know much about your Tu Su, my disciple. Star River King smiled slightly and said, similarly, you don't understand the origin of the power of faith. Ahem. That's true. Sword King Chen Taishu said with a little embarrassment. He was a pure sword puppet, and indeed did not understand the power of faith. Why did Li Yuan expose his strength in advance? Why did he stop hiding his true appearance? Do you think it was really just to build momentum? It's not that simple. At this moment, it can be said that the great world of CND was watching his battle. He had recovered his true appearance and displayed his powerful strength, all for the sake of winning the providence. Luck and power of faith could be said to be closely related. Fame was luck, and being worshipped was the accumulation of luck. It was also the earliest form of condensing power of faith. Although the effect is not as good, and it has only just begun, and there is no time to accumulate it, the great world of CND is paying attention to it. It is enough to sustain a Daluo Jingxian in a continuous battle. Therefore, the problem you mentioned is not a problem at all. It is just that he is not accumulating it, but he has already begun to accumulate it rapidly. It is enough to sustain the accumulation of his consumption. Chen Taishu and Prince Ing were both incomparably shocked. Even they had not thought of this. One had to admit that Celestial River King, the #1 immortal emperor, was not someone they could compare to. However, at the same time, Chen Hao also did not think about the Celestial River King's words. He just wanted to completely trample Qin Tianhe under his feet and completely defeat him so that it would be easier for him to fuse with this independent thought that had lost control of its origin. It could be said that he hit the nail on the head. Chen Hao only found out after a few moves that his power of faith had an endless supply, and it had exceeded the speed of his consumption. I see. So, Li Yuan is going to win? Chen Taishu suddenly said. That is not necessarily true. I just said that I have lost 100% confidence in Tianhe. For the time being, I am not sure who the final winner will be. Tianhe still has a stronger power that he has not used. Brother Chen, I will say it directly. I said so much because I love talent. I don't want to lose such a good disciple. Similarly, I believe you don't want to lose such a good Tushu. Therefore, I think that no matter who wins in the end, whose thoughts dominate, we can have a very perfect ending. What do you mean? If Tianhe wins, I will still let him be your Tushu. Of course, Tianhe cannot be your only disciple. Although the relationship between him and Xiao Xia has not been announced to the world, it has been confirmed in private. I can't hide this from you. Ahem, Brother Xiao, I understand what you mean. That is to say, if Li Yuan wins, I will let him be your disciple and let Xiao Manxia be his Dao companion, right? Yes. But I can't promise you this. Oh. Why? Isn't this a way to have the best of both worlds? Or brother, do you think Li Yuan will win? You know, Li Yuan said that I am his idol. Even if he wins, if I want to accept him as my disciple, he should be very happy. What's more, after the fusion, their minds will not be destroyed. What do you think? Brother Xiao, I will say what I want to say. He is my Tushu. I can't impose my consciousness on him. This is not my style. In my opinion, no matter what the outcome is, it should be his own decision. I should not interfere, and I will not interfere, that's good. Then let's wait for the results to come out. As long as you do not object to my statement, it will be fine. Celestial River King frowned slightly and said nothing. Chen Taishu also did not say anything, but he felt a faint worry in his heart. Since the Celestial River King took the initiative to say this, the meaning behind it was obvious. He did not want to lose such a talented disciple. Even if Qin Hao won, he would still take him under his wing. How could Chen Taishu not worry about such a situation? The Celestial River King was not as easy to talk to as he looked on the surface. As the strongest person in the great world of CND, as long as he wanted to do something, there was nothing he could not do. No one could go against his will. Otherwise, there would only be one result, destruction. Chen Taishu could not do it, and neither could King Ying. Moreover, Chen Taishu had already learned some things about the Celestial River King from Qin Hao. How could Qin Hao become his disciple? King Ying, who had been paying attention to the two, did not speak. However, a trace of worry flashed through her eyes. She also learned about Qin Hao from Si Xian and had the same idea as Chen Taishu. However, the two of them had no other choice but to take one step at a time. Chi chi chi. Boom boom boom, Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe fought back and forth and were locked in a fierce battle. The sharp and tricky attacks made the spectators scream again and again. As time went by, the experts who had seen a lot of ancient martial arts were still okay. However, most of the cultivators were more and more shocked. The two's attacks were so skillful that they did not repeat any of their moves. Instead, they became more and more exquisite. They had never thought that such exquisite sword skills could exist. Chi! Chi! Ding! Boom boom, suddenly, the two of them stabbed each other with the tip of their swords. A terrifying energy exploded between the two, and the two separated for the first time since the close combat. Chapter 1427. Humph. Are you trying to defeat me with pure sword Dao? Qin Tianhe, who finally had a chance to catch his breath, said coldly, or should I say, your strongest combat strength is sword Dao. If that's the case, admit defeat and fuse with me. I can consider fulfilling your wishes as much as possible. Boom! Qin Tianhe said proudly. As he spoke, the aura around him became stronger again. A majestic and vigorous blood qi soared into the sky. His physical body did not change at all, but he gave off the feeling of a god of war descending. He suddenly became several times more majestic and terrifying. At the same time, the sword in his hand turned into a stream of light and entered between his eyebrows. Obviously, he did not want to fight with sword techniques anymore. Everyone looked at Qin Tianhe's transformation in shock and was speechless. Even Xiao Jiutian, Qing Yang, and Miao Xian's pupils shrank. What a powerful aura! Deer Chaser Ares technique? Someone in the crowd exclaimed. Deer Chaser Ares technique. It's definitely the strongest technique of Deer Chaser Academy, Deer Chaser Ares technique. Qin Tianhe is so strong. He has only been in the great world of CND for a few hundred years, but he has already successfully cultivated the strongest technique of Deer Chaser Academy. This is unbelievable. No wonder he can become the chief Grand Luo of Deer Chaser Academy. In the same realm, once he uses the Ares technique, heaven and earth will submit. Who can compete with him? Deer Chaser Ares technique was the strongest technique of Deer Chaser Academy. Once it was successfully cultivated, its power would be boundless. It was even stronger than the Shao clan's heavenly silkworm 9 transformations. Is he going to admit defeat? Contrary to the expectations of most people, Qin Hao, who was surrounded by the energy of faith and the aura of slaughter, actually revealed a wisp of a victor's smile when facing Qin Tianhe, whose aura soared like the descent of a god of war, and spoke indifferently and with disdain. Force. An invisible force, an invincible force. It was still emitting from Qin Hao's body, spreading toward the endless void. It was invisible and untouchable, but it appeared in everyone's state of mind. However, most people did not understand the meaning of Qin Hao's words. Admit defeat? How could Qin Tianhe admit defeat? However, to everyone's surprise, Qin Hao's words made Qin Tianhe's expression turn ugly. After hesitating for a while, Qin Tianhe resolved the doubts in everyone's hearts. I am indeed a little inferior to you in terms of swordsmanship, but it's just a little bit. Even if I persevere, you won't be able to do anything to me. What's the point? If you don't continue, how do you know it's meaningless? Forget it, meaningless disputes are meaningless. I will let you know that since I created you, I have the ability to destroy you with true power. Come on. Boom. Qin Hao didn't waste any more words. A vast and pure blood aura, one that was even more powerful than Qin Tianhe's, gushed out along with his words. Alright, since that's the case, I'll let you experience my strongest combat strength. Qin Tianhe said coldly. Then, he suddenly shouted, only I, the god of war, will fight for supremacy in the world. Roar. Chi chi chi. Following Qin Tianhe's shout, the energy of heaven and earth suddenly gathered towards him at a terrifying speed. This time, under the gaze of countless cultivators, regardless of whether they were at the scene or in the immortal realm, everyone could clearly see that Qin Tianhe's body had expanded by tens of thousands of times in an instant. His muscles, bones, and tendons emitted crisp and terrifying cracking sounds. A vast and terrifying aura pressed down on the crowd like a towering mountain. He punched out, and instantly, an incomparably huge fist radiance bloomed with a destructive aura and shot towards Qin Hao at an astonishing speed. So powerful. Amazing. Can Great Li Yuan do it? Countless cultivators looked at Qin Tianhe, who had expanded by tens of thousands of times like the god of war, in horror. At this moment, Qin Hao was like an insignificant ant in front of Qin Tianhe. Regardless of whether it was the aura of power, the aura of suppression, or the ethereal but real aura, none of them could be compared to Qin Tianhe's. Dear chasing art of war. I am the god of war, I am the god of war. Following the crazy increase in his strength, Qin Tianhe's confidence, which had been slightly affected, suddenly swelled again. The belief of invincibility rose, and he could clearly feel that at this moment, he was in control of the pulse of heaven and earth. Die. Explode. Just as the devastating fist aura was about to reach Qin Hao, Qin Tianhe let out a loud roar and suddenly detonated it. Rumble, a terrifying explosion occurred. The hearts of the girls and Qin Hao's brothers and sisters clenched at this moment. Their eyes were wide open, and they were extremely nervous. This was because the power of Qin Hao's god of war art had increased by too much. Even though they had almost blind worship and faith in Qin Hao, they could not be sure that Qin Hao would be able to withstand this punch. Crack. Crack. Crack, 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 crack. However, in the midst of this terrifying energy explosion, the body of Qin Hao, who was as tiny as an ant, suddenly emitted a clear sound of bones and meridians that were filled with power. It seemed to be disorderly, but every sound was able to penetrate the terrifying explosion and resound in the hearts of the cultivators. At the same time, with every sound, the treasured sword in the hands of Qin Hao, who was standing proudly like an ant, would advance a little bit. Not only did his body not expand, but it also shrank rapidly with his movements. However, an extremely shocking scene appeared. A blood-red phantom, which was filled with endless killing aura, appeared in the void above Qin Hao's head. It was so huge that it was even bigger than Qin Hao's expanded body. It made the same movements as Qin Hao. At this moment, even the cultivators below the seventh heaven and above the first heaven of the cutting path true immortal realm could not sense any abnormalities in the phantom, let alone any energy fluctuations. However, the cultivators above the seventh heaven of the cutting path true immortal realm, as well as some experts who had truly awakened the hidden spirit and had mastered some of the ways to use it, all widened their eyes in horror. Ah! Miao Xian exclaimed. Her beautiful eyes were wide open, and she almost could not believe what she was seeing. Her heart was in her throat involuntarily. Ein spirit attack. How could he be so crazy? That was his doppelganger, which was not inferior to his completely independent doppelganger. Such a pure Yin spirit attack was undoubtedly fatal to Qin Hao, who was using his Yang spirit attack. However, it was also fatal to Chen Hao. Last time, Chen Hao and Miao Xian were lucky enough to survive because of the accidental fusion of yin and yang. Otherwise, they would not have survived until now. However, even though Chen Hao knew the danger, he still attacked Chen Tianhe, whose strength was not inferior to his. What was the difference between this and perishing together? Chapter 1428. Bang! Chen Hao's body, which was as tiny as an ant, was finally unable to withstand the terrifying fist aura when the sword was completely unleashed. His body exploded like a human bomb. Ah! Ah! Countless screams were heard. Whether it was the siblings who knew Chen Hao or the cultivators who didn't know Chen Hao, they all felt sorry for him. No matter what, he was a true monstrous genius. He definitely had the strength to challenge the top 3 of the Daluo Golden Wonderland in the great world of CND. However, he exploded and died. Miao Xian covered her chest and her face turned pale. Junior sister. Qing Yang also widened his eyes in shock and held Miao Xian's shoulder. It wasn't that they didn't expect such an ending, but they didn't expect it to happen so suddenly and so quickly. Why was Chen Hao so irrational? Even if his Yin soul could kill his opponent's Yin soul, so what? However, those who truly understood Chen Hao, such as Chen Nan and the others, were only shocked at the first moment before they heaved a long sigh of relief. This was because they saw a strand of resplendent green light. Even though it was only a tiny bit, it was filled with extremely pure vitality. Oh my God, little Hao Hao's life origin is even purer than my inheritance. It's so powerful. The effeminate Zhou Qinglong even extended his thumb and middle finger. He was dumbfounded and said with a face full of admiration. Qi. Chen Hao's physical body was destroyed, but he managed to complete the Yin deity phantom of his sword and stabbed out. In the eyes of many cultivators, there was no energy or sound, but it was as fast as lightning. Before Chen Hao's huge body could react, the phantom and the heaven and earth merged into one and pierced through Chen Tianhe's body. The sword radiance was aimed at Chen Tianhe's forehead. Chen Hao's phantom passed through Chen Tianhe's body like a shadow without any damage. It was as if a real phantom had passed through him. However, boom! Raging flames spurted out from Chen Tianhe's body. Ah! Roar! At this moment, Chen Tianhe let out a crazy and shrill roar. His eyes instantly became lifeless. Wang! Not far away, a sparkling, emerald light suddenly shook, and Chen Hao's figure appeared again. Although his eyes were still empty and he was in a daze, his spirit was full. His aura was no different from the previous Chen Hao's physical body. The sun's spirit was intact. As for Chen Hao's gigantic Yin spirit shadow, it disappeared the moment it pierced through Chen Tianhe's forehead. We won. At this moment, the top experts on the rostrum and the experts above the 7th level of Cutting Path True Immortal all looked at Chen Hao, who had been revived with full blood. They were extremely shocked. At this moment, even though the result was still not out, there was already no suspense. Chen Hao's powerful Yin spirit attack directly crushed and devoured Chen Hao's Yin spirit, while Chen Hao's Yang spirit was instantly reconstructed with his powerful and pure life force, without any damage. At this moment, it was just a matter of waiting, because Chen Hao's Yin spirit had been integrated into Chen Tianhe's Yang spirit, which was burning because of the imbalance of Yin and Yang. Junior sister, look. His Yang spirit is fine. It's the life force, what a powerful life force. It can be reconstructed in an instant. Ah! Qing Yang's excited voice woke Miao Xian, who was uncontrollably immersed in sorrow, and her pale face instantly showed excitement. When they saw the life force shining, the girls and Chen Nan's brothers and sisters, who had already breathed a sigh of relief, showed excited smiles at this moment. Dahua Li Yuan is really too strong. It's already amazing that the Daluo Golden Wonderland can awaken the Yin spirit, but he can cultivate it to the same level as the Yang spirit. He can launch an attack as powerful as the Yang spirit and defeat Chen Tianhe's Yin spirit with one move and occupy his physical body immediately. Using the characteristics of life of the same origin, he can adjust the subtle balance of Yin and Yang. And his own yang spirit can use the extremely pure life force to reconstruct in the first place. It's really incredible. Who can fight against such a freak? This time, Dahua Liyuan will definitely take the champion's throne. His combat strength has completely surpassed the shackles of the realm. He is absolutely invincible. It should be. At least until now, in the tens of millions of years in the Daluo Golden Wonderland, I have never seen such a freakish combat strength. Some of the true experts who understood what was going on exchanged words in surprise. At this time, Xiao Jiutian, Kong Ying, and the other experts also looked at Qin Hao in horror, and their expressions became more solemn. Kong Ying frowned, and her fighting spirit soared uncontrollably. Her long hair fluttered without wind, causing the top 100 members around her to look sideways. But after only a few seconds, Kong Ying's fighting spirit suddenly weakened until it disappeared. Then, she seemed to shake her head helplessly, and did not avoid the attention of the crowd as she muttered, "Is this the real great era? If I had broken through the coffin and stepped on the path of a stronger great Tao, maybe I could. But now, I'm afraid I'm no match for him, and this is just the great world of Xian Di." Kong Ying admits that she is no match for Dahua Liyuan. Many of the cultivators who noticed Kong Ying were still surprised after hearing her words, although they thought it was normal. After all, Kong Ying had not revealed her true combat strength yet, and she had already become one of the top 10 in everyone's hearts. Such a heaven-defying existence would not admit defeat easily even if she was not as good as her opponent, unless there was an insurmountable gap. Here, the so-called insurmountable gap was the situation where one could not defeat the opponent even if their own little universe erupted. Xiao Jiutian also glanced at Kong Ying, and then looked at the arena again with a solemn gaze. No one knew what he was thinking, but from his sharp eyes, one could be sure that he did not admit his inferiority like Kong Ying did. Hiss! Hiss! Sure enough, a moment later, the raging flames on Qin Hao's body weakened rapidly. When they completely disappeared, they turned into a stream of light and entered the glabella of Qin Hao's reconstructed body. Boom! Ah dash! Everyone thought that this would be the end. Dahua Liyuan would win, and Qin Tianhe, who everyone thought most highly of, would be fused. However, to everyone's surprise, the moment Qin Hao and Qin Tianhe fused, a sudden change occurred. Qin Hao's aura was like a river bursting through a dam or a volcano erupting. In an instant, endless Tao laws and resplendent immortal light gushed out, as if they had completely lost control. They surged violently, causing Qin Hao to let out a shrill and terrifying scream. Bang! Bang bang! Bang bang bang! Qin Hao's body and even the glabella began to explode continuously at this moment. In an instant, bloody holes appeared, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Even the saint-level soft armor he wore could not withstand the power of the explosion from Qin Hao's body. The runes shattered, and the soft armor cracked. Chapter 1429. Ah! How? Miao Xian, who had just calmed down a little, immediately cried out in surprise once again. This time, even Qin Shui, Helian Wuzi, and the other girls, as well as Chen Nan and the other brothers and sisters, who were extremely confident in Qin Hao, were no exception. What's going on? Sword King Qin Hao, King Ying, Qin Wanxiang, Mo Shilin, Ruolin, Ruoxian and other masters who cared about Qin Hao were also stunned at this moment. Even they did not expect such a change. Although they did not know what had happened to Qin Hao, they could clearly see that it was definitely not a good thing. Especially the aura and Tao laws that were close to exploding. Once completely out of control, it was very likely that Qin Hao's body would explode and his body and soul would be destroyed. The winner has been decided. I'll help him. Qi. Before Qin Taishu's voice fell, he directly turned into a sword light and disappeared from the rostrum. Qin Hao was his nephew. Although he was not Qin Wuyang's biological son, he was no different from his own. How could he let anything happen to Qin Hao under his nose? However, no, brother Qin. Qi. Without any movement, Star River King stepped out and stood in front of Qin Taishu. His opponent was the new generation of Sword King, Qin Taishu. This made the top experts on the rostrum feel horrified. The Celestial River King had shown a lot of affection towards Chen Taishu before, indicating that he had deliberately tried to win over Chen Taishu. It made everyone think that even if Chen Taishu's strength was not as good as the Celestial River King's, the gap between them would not be too big. However, at this moment, the Celestial River King casually took a step forward. Everyone who had not seen the Celestial River King in action for many years understood that the Celestial River King's position as the #1 person in the Great Thousand World was unshakable. "Brother Xiao, what are you doing?" Chen Taishu stared at Star River King, who appeared in front of him out of thin air. He was also shocked. Although the other party's aura was not released at all, at this moment, it gave him an insurmountable feeling. Strong. Very strong. Chen Taishu, who was already the #1 swordsman, clearly felt that the gap between him and Star River King was insurmountable at this moment. "The match is not over yet," Celestial River King said with a faint smile as he stared at Chen Taishu. A feeling that could not be disobeyed enveloped the world. At this moment, he was the heavens and the earth. His words were the order of the world. No one could deny it. If it were anyone else, they would have retreated immediately. But, Brother Xiao, Chen Tianhe's spirit was severely injured and collapsed. Together with the yang spirit that went out of control, he was swallowed and merged by Li Yuan. Isn't the outcome of the battle obvious? Chen Taishu suppressed the irresistible feeling in his heart, and a fierce sword intent flashed in his eyes. Only then did he manage to break free from the Celestial River King's momentum. The Yin spirit was severely injured, but it did not collapse. As for the yang spirit that went out of control, does it matter who swallows whom? They were meant to fuse. And now, Li Yuan is unable to fully control the other lives. Such a change is an opportunity for Tianhe and the other lives. How can it be uncontrollable? Prince Ying interrupted. You are also worried about him? The Celestial River King turned his head to look at Prince Ying and asked. Prince Ying's expression, at this moment, could not hide a trace of nervousness. Naturally, it could not escape the Celestial River King's eyes. He is the disciple of my new disciple, Qin Si. Naturally, I have to be concerned, is that so? Ying, is there anyone in the world who knows you better than me? Ha! The Celestial River King laughed, and did not continue to ask the question. Instead, he continued, including his original body, there are a total of 8 lives. Before, Li Yuan had fused with Qin Qi and another life, but he did not truly merge them. And Tianhe had fused with the other 4 lives, but he also did not merge them. And now that the 8 lives have suddenly merged, Li Yuan's soul origin power is unable to be controlled at all. You mean he should slowly merge them one by one? That's right. If he truly merged them into one, then there would be no problem with the next one. It is not that easy to become a fatty in one go. If he can do it, then it can only be said that his 9 lives profound technique has failed. Because besides his original body, the other clones are too weak. And the most fatal point is that he only has 8 lives. What do you mean? King Ying asked. Look. The Celestial River King looked at the center of the arena. Chi. Chi chi chi. It was also at this time that something even more shocking happened to Chen Hao. In the explosion of flesh and blood, an incomparably powerful aura shot up into the sky, jumping out of Chen Hao's body. However, under the restraint of Chen Hao's aura, they appeared around him and froze in the void. 1, 2, 3, the aura of the Mad Demon Realm, the Tao Manifestation Immortal Fruit Tree, and the Spirit Spring Sea. The girls and Chen Hao's siblings all exclaimed at this moment. The first 3 auras that escaped were the auras of Chen Hao's clones. Following that, the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th auras of the Tree of Life, Shao Qi, the second anima, and the Slaughter Life's auras all rushed out. In an instant, the auras of Chen Hao's second life to the 8th life, a total of 7 lives, including Chen Hao's original body, all appeared. Of the 8 auras, there was no doubt that the aura of Chen Hao's original body was the strongest. It was also the foundation that bound the other 7 auras together. However, although 6 of the other 7 auras didn't dissipate, they formed a clear division between them and the original body. They didn't give way to each other and were fiercely struggling, as if they could break free of the original body's aura at any time. The only aura that didn't struggle was the 7th life, Chen Qi. Chen Qi had lost to Chen Hao's original body in a completely fair battle, and he had lost wholeheartedly. This was one of the factors. More importantly, Chen Qi was the only life that Chen Hao had completely connected with. It could be said that he was an existence equal to Chen Hao's original body. Under such circumstances, there was almost no conflict between Chen Qi and the original body. The only difference was the time it took for them to merge. This, Chen Taixiu, Prince Ying, and the other experts widened their eyes in shock. Sure enough, as the Star River King said, Chen Hao's 7 clones were on the verge of losing control. Obviously, Chen Hao's original body was forcibly holding on. Of the 7 lives, besides Chen Qi, the other 6 could break free at any time. Wang! Qi qi qi! Chen Hao's body suddenly shook again. In an instant, endless runes rose up. Roar! Amidst the raging energy and splashing blood, Chen Hao's arms were stretched out. His long hair fluttered in the wind as he madly roared. At the same time, his spiritual altar completely bloomed. The resplendent crystal light was so dazzling that no one dared to look directly at it. Even more astonishing was that within the resplendent crystal light, his special ability, the fiery golden eyes, was faintly flashing. Chapter 1430. Suppress him. Qi! Qi, qi, qi! Along with Chen Hao's boundlessly cold shout, the countless talismans suddenly condensed into strands of peerlessly sharp sword light. In an instant, they formed a dense net of swords that interweaved with the heavens and the earth like an inescapable net. What? At this moment, countless people exclaimed, especially the cultivators from the Daluo Golden Wonderland and the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm. They were so shocked that they could not be described with words. His divine ability was fused with his sword Dao, and then it formed a dense sword net that covered the sky and covered the sun. It would be fine if it was just a sword net, but every single sword light that Chen Hao formed actually had a connection. Their auras resonated with each other, and they relied on each other. Once one sword light was attacked, it would definitely be attacked by countless sword lights. What a powerful sword formation! It's so complicated, but he can actually control it in such a state. It's really unbelievable. His state of mind, willpower, and endurance are definitely at a level that makes one's hair stand on end. Countless people exclaimed. Suppress. This is clearly killing. Unlike the crowd, who was shocked by Chen Hao's abnormal strength, the old man on the rostrum, as well as countless true immortal kings and Dao-severing true immortals, were puzzled when they saw the sword formation that Chen Hao had sent out. That sword formation was clearly a killing sword formation. How could it be used to suppress? That was impossible. Even true immortal king realm experts thought so. It seems that he's already confirmed that he can't control the rioting clones. After Chen Hao's 7 lives escaped, all the cultivators already knew what was going on. The courage of a warrior to cut off his wrist is also rare and commendable. It's just a pity that he can't truly merge the 7 clones after painstakingly cultivating them. Yes, it's such a pity. However, at this point, there's no other way. That's right. They're already in one physical body. Once the 7 lives escape, there's only one result: they'll explode and die, their bodies and souls destroyed. If the 7 lives still had their fleshly bodies and soul palaces, then they would be able to escape. But now, they were actually sharing their fleshly bodies and soul palaces with Chen Hao. It was just that they had yet to truly become one. Therefore, once the 7 clones escaped, Chen Hao's main body, who controlled the soul palace and the body, had no chance of surviving. What a pity, what a pity. If his other lives, such as Chen Tianhe, had escaped, what would have happened? The soul of a rootless duckweed. It required a true immortal king realm expert to condense a soul palace and reconstruct a golden body for it to recover. However, whether or not he can recover his previous innate talent and strength, it would depend on the strength of the person who condensed it. Chen Tianhe should have no problems with it, his master is a celestial river king. I see. No wonder the celestial river king stopped the sword king. Countless cultivators discussed among themselves. The sword king Chen Hao and King Ying also thought so. However, in the face of the number one person in the great world of CND, there was nothing they could do. After all, the competition between Chen Hao and Chen Tianhe was within the rules. Since they knew that the outcome of the competition had not been decided, they could not violate the rules of the competition. It was a long story, but in fact, it happened in an instant. Just as the crowd was feeling sorry for Chen Hao's fiery golden eyes suddenly emitted a dazzling golden light with a chi sound. In an instant, an incomparably sacred aura quickly spread out and integrated into the sword net. At this moment, the dazzling golden light was so sacred that it made countless cultivators, even those of a higher realm, and even those of the true immortal king realm, feel a sense of worship. It filled every single sword light of the sword net. Godhood. The godhood of an immortal emperor. Oh my god. At this moment, whether it was the spectators on Deer Chaser Peak or the mighty figures in the celestial realm, they all exclaimed. In particular, the mighty figure of the true immortal king in charge of the commentary in the celestial realm caused countless cultivators in the celestial realm to explode. Bastard. Ah 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 ah. He actually used Shi Chao's godhood. Li Wuxiang, the dean of Tanglong Academy, who could not wait for Chen Hao to explode and die immediately, exploded in anger when he sensed the aura contained in the golden light. He almost vomited blood and died. However, soon after, Li Wuxiang seemed to have thought of something. His eyes widened and he sucked in a breath of cold air. The shock in his heart had reached an indescribable level. How is this possible? Even if he obtained Shi Chao's godhood, how could he control it? It's impossible, impossible. How did he do it? Li Wuxiang muttered to himself. He was so shocked that his words were trembling. That was a godhood that only the spirits of all living beings who reincarnated as immortal emperors could possess. To be more precise, it was something that only immortal emperors could truly possess. Even if it was an expert at the true immortal king realm or immortal emperor, it was said in the remnant records and some inherited memories that no one could easily control another's godhood. The godhood was the fruit of the immortal emperor's strongest great Tao. Every cultivator's Tao was different from each other. At most, one could comprehend the mysteries contained in the godhood and use it for reference. It was almost impossible to control it. However, Chen Hao actually used Shi Chao's godhood. How could Li Wuxiang not be shocked? Buzz. Buzz buzz buzz. A slender and tall figure faintly appeared in the golden light. He stood in the void above the sword net and looked down at the world. He naturally revealed an aura of disdain for the world. Ah! Isn't this figure? Isn't this the Tanglong Academy's Shi Chao who was in the limelight at the beginning of the team competition? Tanglong and Shi Chao were killed by Li Yuan of the University of Dahua in the team competition and obtained his godhood? No, even if he obtained Tanglong's godhood, how could he use it? After Li Wuxiang, when the pressure of the godhood continued to increase and caused Shi Chao's figure to appear, countless experts were shocked. Before this, not everyone knew about the matter between Chen Hao and Shi Chao. After all, during the team competition, there was no image. They only knew that the University of Dahua and the Tanglong Academy met and Tanglong retreated. After the competition, Shi Chao did not appear again. Godhood. At this moment, the calm Star River King frowned slightly. A touch of imperceptible excitement and shock flashed in his eyes. This is the real godhood. The Star River King's powerful mind perception directly pierced through time and space and quietly integrated into Shi Chao's figure. He felt the godhood's aura that made him want to submit to it. He was extremely excited. Half-step immortal emperor, the number one immortal emperor in the great thousand world, he was only a hair's breadth away from breaking the legend and becoming a lofty immortal emperor. However, after 20 million years, he hadn't made any progress. He was clearly one step away, but there was still a layer of membrane that he couldn't break through. Chapter 1431. Now, the divine spark of an immortal emperor had finally appeared in front of the Star River King. The Celestial River King had long known that the spirits of all living beings would soon surface. In this year's ranking competition, the Celestial River King had already locked onto dozens of people who might be the reincarnations of immortal emperors. However, he had not taken any action for the time being. Therefore, the appearance of Shi Chao's godhead and the feeling of the godhead's aura made him extremely excited. The Star River King knew very well that if he relied on himself, he might stop at the half-step immortal emperor realm for the rest of his life. After all, he was already at the peak of this world and had gathered the strongest luck. He was invincible, and it was impossible for him to have any opportunities unless he left the great world of CND. But where could he find a better place than the great world of CND? Because of this, the divine spark might be his only hope. Even if he could not refine the divine spark, he believed that he could learn a little bit from the aura of the divine spark and perfect his great Tao. Only in this way could he have a chance to cultivate and step into the immortal emperor realm. A divine spark is a great Tao, and this kid can actually control the great Tao of others. How can it be described as simple? The Star River King secretly thought. When the Star River King obtained Qin Tianhe as his disciple, he knew that Qin Tianhe's original body was not simple. Not to mention anything else, just by condensing the terrifying power of faith into Qin Tianhe and letting Qin Tianhe control it, he could infer that Qin Tianhe not only had countless devout believers, but also a huge number of cultivators. Even the total number of cultivators in a medium-sized vast thousand world could not be compared to him. Moreover, he must have a stronger power, otherwise, he would not have let Qin Tianhe control the power of faith. And Qin Tianhe's original body could gather such a majestic power of faith at such a young age. What did it mean? It meant that his original body must have relied on his heaven-defying talent to gain the admiration of countless cultivators in the Daluo Golden Wonderland. After learning about Qin Hao's other lives, the Star River King was even more certain that Qin Tianhe's original body was not simple, because almost every life had its own characteristics. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were completely different, and each of them was very strong. As the founder of the 9 Lives Profound technique, he believed that he could not do it. This was because his Tao could not merge completely different Tao laws together. And now, Qin Hao's original body could actually use other people's godhead, which was even more inconceivable. We have to take him down no matter what. It would be even better if he could self-destruct at this time. His godhead can't be destroyed. The Celestial River King felt slightly excited, and his eyes could not help but light up. At this time, if Qin Hao self-destructed, his divine deity would definitely appear, and Shi Chao's divine deity would also regain its freedom. There was no doubt about this. What a pity. Celestial River King shook his head slightly, his eyes flashing. As soon as Shi Chao's godhood appeared, it only took a moment for Qin Tianhe and the others to submit to it. At this moment, Qin Hao, whose physical body had stopped exploding, directly controlled the sword net to shrink. Like catching turtles in a jar, he once again sucked the clones into his glabella. The Celestial River King did not notice that Prince Ying, who seemed to be staring at the battle ring in shock, was actually observing every move he made. The person who knew the Celestial River King the best in the world was none other than Prince Ying. Although the Celestial River King controlled his expression to the point of perfection, Prince Ying still saw through some clues, which made Prince Ying even more worried. Little brother Qin. Sword King Qin Taishu was slightly surprised that Prince Ying took the initiative to send him a message. Do you like Qin Hao a lot? Cough cough. I was talking about Li Yuan. Under the tense situation, Prince Ying directly said Qin Hao's name, but just as he finished speaking, he realized that Qin Taishu might not know the name Qin Hao, so he hurriedly added. I know, Prince Ying, I know about Qin Hao's situation, and I also know about your relationship with him, and about the ancient chaos great thousand world. Ah? This time it was Prince Ying's turn to be surprised. In fact, when Qin Hao confirmed that Qin Taishu was his uncle, he told him everything about his father and the ancient chaos Great Thousand World, including what happened between Yilan, Prince Ying, and the Celestial River King, and the development of the Great World of CND and the ancient chaos Great Thousand World. Therefore, Qin Taishu knew about the relationship between Prince Ying and Qin Hao. However, the information that Prince Ying got from Si Xian was much less. Even Si Xian did not know about the real relationship between Qin Hao and Qin Taishu, let alone Prince Ying. I wonder if Prince Ying still remembers my brother. Your younger brother. Oh, let me think. You have the Sword Emperor's body, while he has the Martial Emperor's body. In terms of pure talent, he is stronger than you. However, he seems to have disappeared for a very, very long time, right? Prince Ying said. At Prince Ying's level and age, he had experienced too much. Regularly clearing the useless memory fragments, which was the cutting path, was already something that he had to do. Otherwise, an expert with a photographic memory would definitely not use the word think. And this was based on the information that Qin Taishu had. Yes. He entered the endless cycle of reincarnation, and sealed his martial supreme body. Why did he seal it? Oh, I understand. He is versatile but not proficient. He could not control it, right? Yes. It's been tens of millions of years. I always thought that my brother had met a true immortal king in the endless cycle of reincarnation, and had truly fallen. I never thought that I would suddenly receive news about my brother. You're saying all this. Could it be that Qin Hao is related to your brother? Your brother seems to be called Qin Wuyang. Yes, Qin Wuyang. Ah. So it's him. I understand now. Prince Ying suddenly remembered the information that Si Xian had given him about Qin Hao's father, Qin Wuyang. At this moment, even without Qin Taishu saying anything, Prince Ying already knew the relationship between him and Qin Hao. This was a relationship worthy of trust. Prince Ying, what do you want to say to me? As the sword puppet, Qin Taishu went straight to the point after explaining. The Celestial River King covets Qin Hao. I know that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said those things to me before. I'm not talking about becoming his disciple. He definitely doesn't covet a disciple. You don't know how strong his obsession to reach the peak of the martial Tao is. Becoming an immortal emperor is his greatest goal. For this goal, he would do anything. Everything is above him. The only thing in his heart is the martial Tao. Prince Ying's voice carried a hint of sorrow. Prince Ying, what do you mean? Godhood. He covets the godhood. Moreover, it's Qin Hao's godhood. Understanding the mysteries of the godhood may be one of the best ways to become an immortal emperor. His expression already tells me that he will not let Qin Hao go. What he wants to do, no one can stop him. I don't have the confidence to do it alone. He is a half-step immortal emperor. Although his cultivation level has stagnated for many years, his battle prowess seems to have increased. Although I've been working hard, the gap between us is still growing. Chapter 1432. King Ying, I understand what you mean. Don't worry, I will do my best to help you. No matter what, we must protect Qin Hao. He is not only my nephew, but also the son-in-law of all my brother's daughters. My niece's son-in-law, my Tushu. I have been lonely for many years. Although the time is not ripe yet, the possibility of teaming up with you to challenge the invincible legend of the Star River King is something that I have always longed for. Good, that's good. Whether my poor daughter can return or not depends on Qin Hao. Even if we have to shed all pretense of cordiality, we must ensure his safety. However, King Ying, he won't make a move now, right? Of course not now. If he wants to make a move, it will be after the competition. However, at this moment, he must have locked onto Qin Hao. It would be impossible to escape from his sight. Of course, he will definitely find a reason for himself. This kind of thing is what he is best at. Understood. The two of them finished their discussion without batting an eyelid. Phew! At this moment, Chen Hao let out a long sigh of relief and opened his eyes. After activating Shi Chao's godhead to suppress, Chen Hao finally absorbed all 7 lives into his soul palace and suppressed them. Finally, I've survived. I didn't expect the 8 lives to be so strong after fusing together. Even with my soul power, it almost collapsed. What a monster. Cough cough, it seems like it's all me. After returning to his original appearance and completely suppressing the 7 lives, Chen Hao felt extremely relaxed. His mood became exceptionally comfortable in an instant. The 7 clones were all settled, and it was impossible for them to cause any more trouble. Without a doubt, Chen Hao's worries were solved. He only needed some time to completely fuse with them. Moreover, he had been hiding under the Great Change technique for all these years. Although it did not affect his strength, when he undid the concealment at this time, whether it was his mood, state of mind, or feeling, they all became incomparably bright. It was as refreshing as unsheathing the sword of raising eyebrows. The one who was observing me through the barrier must be that old man. Chen Hao had only managed to borrow Shi Chao's godhead after the fiery golden eyes had been fully activated. The fiery golden eyes was an extraordinary ability that could ignore realms. Even a half-step immortal emperor's divine sense could not escape Chen Hao's senses when he sensed that Chen Hao was near him. Although Chen Hao did not recognize the aura of this spiritual sense, even if he used his toes to think, he could guess that it belonged to a celestial river king, whose spiritual sense could pass through the barrier without being discovered by the arbitration team. Or should I say, even if I find out, I will pretend not to know. Except for the strongest person in the great world of CND, the half-step immortal emperor celestial river king, no one else could achieve such a feat. Otherwise, if any expert could secretly send out their divine sense to interfere with the competition, wouldn't that be terrible? However, even though he knew that the other party had probed him, Chen Hao couldn't say anything. After all, it was just probing, and the other party didn't interfere with him. Besides, even if he interfered, what could he do? The strongest person, the pinnacle existence, had no rules in front of him, because he represented the rules. This was a world where the strong were respected. Can I announce the end now? Chen Hao calmed down and said lightly, with the demeanor of an expert. He deliberately emphasized, I am Dahua Li Yuan. Voila! The martial arts arena, which was still immersed in great shock, was broken by Chen Hao's calm and indifferent words. Dahua Li Yuan. Brother Fatty. No, handsome guy. So strong, so handsome. Li Yuan. I love you. Li Yuan. I love you. All kinds of exclamations and screams broke out. Some female disciples couldn't resist the admiration for Chen Hao in their hearts and directly became Chen Hao's crazy fans. Do you see it? My eyes are bright. This is his true appearance. So handsome. I found that I really fell in love with him. Xian, do you regret it? What are you talking about? What's the use of a handsome man? What do I regret? Pfft, who was the one who kept saying that I liked a fatty with a terrible appearance? Hee hee. It's fine. If you regret it, just say it. You are me, I am you. Aren't we just Tao companions? We can share. Ruolan looked at the cold and arrogant Ruo Xian charmingly and teased. In reality, she and Chen Hao hadn't even started dating yet. However, the teasing between sisters didn't affect them. However, after Ruolan said this, Ruo Xian turned her head and looked directly into her eyes. She didn't say anything for a long time, and her gaze became extremely complicated with a trace of surprise. For the first time, Ruolan, who had always seen people through their eyes, couldn't understand the Ruo Xian she was most familiar with. What's wrong with you? Ruolan couldn't help but ask. You know. Ruo Xian asked a question that Ruolan didn't understand. Know what? Xian, I can't understand your eyes. Could it be that you're hiding something? I'm your best sister. You're so unkind. Ruo Xian was slightly stunned and immediately avoided Ruolan's gaze. It's nothing, No, you have to make it clear. What do I know? It's good that you don't know. We're the best sisters. Everything is enough. What do you say? I don't want to lose you. Ruo Xian's cold and arrogant face showed a touch of bitterness. I know. You also like him, and, you, don't want to share with me, right? Xian, you can't do this. You know, he already has many Dao companions. If we go together, we'll be more competitive. Ruo Xian was speechless, but this time she didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at Ruolan seriously and pretended to ponder for a moment before nodding heavily. Immediately, Ruolan intimately buried her head in Ruo Xian's majestic twin peaks with a happy face. It seemed that she had completely forgotten that the object of their discussion was just a kid from the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Ruo Xian stared at Chen Hao, who returned to the top 10 contestants, and then looked in the direction of the Star River King with a complicated gaze. An imperceptible emotion flashed through her eyes. Good. Very good kid. I like him very much. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, the voice of an old woman resounded in everyone's ears as if it came from the ninth heaven. Endless immortal light poured down, and a majestic and unfathomable aura appeared at the same time. At this moment, even the Star River King looked up at the sky with a slight frown. She? King Ying said in surprise. It's her. Chen Wanxiang rubbed his hands excitedly. Luoying King. Sword King Chen Taishu looked at the endless immortal light in the ninth heaven with a surprised expression. Luoying King, this is Luoying King. It's said that she's already. She's still alive, and her aura is very strong. Chapter 1433. Master. Xue Fian shouted excitedly when she saw the figure. At the same time, she flew toward the figure descending from the ninth heaven. However, she was stopped by an extremely powerful aura. She was Xue Fian's master, Lord Luoying, one of the 8 king-ranked powerhouses in ancient times. No one noticed that Ruo Xian was surprised when she saw the figure. Her body trembled slightly, and she was even more excited than Xue Fian. This was Lord Luoying, who had lived in seclusion in Dahua College for countless years. Only Qing Wanxiang and the other core members knew about her. At this moment, even though her face was covered by a black veil and her body was hidden in a wide black robe, the falling blossom immortal light that had shaken the world hundreds of millions of years ago allowed countless top experts to recognize her identity and were incomparably shocked. For tens of millions of years, most people thought that Lord Luoying and the other king-ranked powerhouses had disappeared in the long river of history, and there was no news about them anymore. That was because of one person, the Star River King. The 8 king-ranked powerhouses rose together, and the Star River King led them alone and unified the great world of Xiandi. At that time, only Lording was not affected. The reason was not a secret in the great world of Xiandi. Of course, most people were just guessing, and the specific truth was only known to those involved. Lord Luoying slowly landed on the rostrum in the rolling Dao principles and the colorful Luoying celestial light. Then, she looked at Lord Star River. Luoying, is it really you? You are still alive. Lord Star River, the most powerful person in the great world of Xiandi, seemed to be incoherent with excitement at this moment. His eyes were fixed on Lord Luoying. Not only am I alive, but I have also broken the seal, recovered my cultivation, and improved my cultivation. Are you disappointed? Disappointed? Luoying, how could I be disappointed? Back then, I looked for you for countless years. Both of you. Humph, no need to say more. I don't want to hear it. Lord Luoying waved her hand and interrupted Lord Star River. Luoying. Lording swayed and came to Lord Luoying's side. How have you been all these years? I thought you. I'm fine. You're still so beautiful. I'm sorry. Don't say that, we are good sisters, the best of sisters, forever. Queen Ying held Queen Luoying's hand, her expression emotional, her eyes sparkling uncontrollably. Star River King, King Ying, and King Luoying seem to have a very complicated relationship. That's for sure. Among the 8 great ancient kings, there were only 2 women, King Ying and King Luoying. Both of them were peerless geniuses, while King Xinghe, King of Saber, King of Sword, King of Wind, King of Monkey and King of 9 Serenities were all peerless geniuses. All of them were once young. How could they not have experienced love and hate? In my opinion, Xinghe King and Luoying King, if you don't want to die, don't make wild guesses. You guys are really bold. While some of the young cultivators were talking about Celestial River King, King Ying, and King Luoying, the academy's old men immediately stopped them. Why are you dressed like this? Prince Ying could not help but ask. I don't want to scare people. Ying, you really don't blame me? King Luoying stared at the charming King Ying. Her eyes were also sparkling as she asked eagerly. I have never blamed you. Sit with me. Ying, let's talk about it later. I'm here mainly to see the performance of our Dahua Academy's Li Yuan. Although King Luoying's voice was very soft, it was clearly heard by everyone. Obviously, she was deliberately expressing her attitude. Li Yuan. Dahua Academy. The crowd suddenly became restless. It was a pity that Qin Hao, who was sealed in the arena, could not hear it. Otherwise, he would be surprised too. So you've been living in seclusion in Dahua Academy? King Ying was slightly surprised but also delighted. That's right. Is Li Yuan your disciple? King Ying asked deliberately. The appearance of King Luoying was undoubtedly a good thing for her. Knowing that King Luoying had specially come to watch Li Yuan's competition, she naturally wanted to help Qin Hao strengthen his momentum. Because even if she and King of Sword Chen Taishu joined forces, they would not have any confidence in defeating the powerful Celestial River King. No, but he's my disciple's future cultivation partner, which is also my Tu Su. Ah! Master! Xue Fian screamed directly. Her originally cold face instantly turned red. Undoubtedly, her master's words made her certain that the so-called fated person was Qin Hao. However, until now, she and Qin Hao had only become brothers and sisters. There were no sparks at all. Or rather, there was no chance for any sparks to fly between them. However, her master had said so in front of everyone. Especially when everyone around her knew that she had jumped into the air and called King Luoying master. How could she not be shy? She wanted to find a hole to hide in. I didn't know, Sister Fian. Ao Qian said. Sister Fian, brother's heart hurts. Although I had a hunch, when I really found out, it was still. Ling Feng deliberately teased. Don't talk nonsense. It's not what you think. That was just my master's prediction, I. That's even more true. The legendary King Luoying King was most proficient in the art of divination. Wasn't that the art of divination? I know that. Ling Feng said confidently. At this moment, Ruoxian bit her lips and looked at King Luoying with a complicated gaze. Was Tu Su just Tu Su? King of Swords Chen Taishu was speechless. Tu Su again. Li Yuan of Dahua wins. At this moment, the host's voice finally sounded and announced Li Yuan's victory. Although this was an extra battle to determine the top 10 candidates, everyone was sure that this was an extremely exciting battle. It was a battle that was rarely seen even in the top 10. Li Yuan of Dahua had won. Chen Tianhe, who was estimated to be the strongest, had disappeared and became a part of Li Yuan's original body. This made Li Yuan of Dahua become the champion, overshadowing the number 1 Grand Luo of the Shao clan, Shao Jiutian. I will now officially announce the top 10 candidates. The rankings are Shao Jiutian, Ning Jing, Li Yuan, Miao Xian, Qin Yang, Bu Chen, Kang Ying, Bai Hua, Lu Fei, and Fan Jianchen. Fan Jianchen was a new contestant, and he was ranked 11th in the previous evaluation. Now, those who think that they are stronger than any of the top 10 candidates can start the challenge. If they succeed, they will become one of the top 10 candidates. If they fail, they will be removed from the top 10. However, they will still have one chance to challenge. I believe everyone is clear about the rules. Alright, let's begin. The host announced. I'll go. As soon as the host finished speaking, a young cultivator from the top 100 who had an imposing appearance and reserved spirit stepped out and took the lead to enter the ring. Su Junfeng, Academy, none. The moment this cultivator stepped onto the stage, his information was displayed in the air above the stage. Everyone was certain that he was a hidden monster that had just appeared.